Chapter 555. Hearing the fourth prince's invitation, Fang Xinjian nodded. Then let's have a good chat. With that, he disappeared together with the fourth prince. Prince Philip glared at Sally and said, "You only know how to stir up trouble all day long. Alan, bring the young miss back. Without my instructions, she's not allowed to come out." Sally's lips twitched unhappily, but there was nothing she could do when facing her grandfather, who was a divine-level expert. Some time ago, when she had been investigating the injuries of the rebirth sword technique, she had already gotten into a series of trouble. After all, those who could stop the rebirth sword technique were all major characters from various political factions. If it was not because Prince Philip was supporting her, she would have been killed in a small alley. Despite this, she had no choice but to return to the BI's region. However, she could not stay idle. She started to wipe out all sorts of evil influences, such as slave traders and bandits in the plains. However, she had accidentally encountered the Serene Shrine's slave-capturing team and had been captured. If she had not met Fang Xinjian, she would probably be in a terrible state. Thinking of Fang Xinjian, her expression became even more complicated. This lad, who had just become a conferred knight a year ago, had now become a major character whom even she had to look up to. After Philip gave his instructions, he disappeared with a flash. Clearly, he had gone to chase after Fang Xinjian and the fourth prince. In the blink of an eye, they appeared several tens of thousands of meters up in the sky. Fang Xinjian and the fourth prince were both standing in void space. Nodding toward Prince Philip, the fourth prince looked at Fang Xinjian and said, "Xinjian, although you're not a divine-level expert yet, you already have powers that can go up against divine-level experts. This is really unexpected. What other matters do you have? Could it be that you want to join forces with me to go up against the first prince?" Fang Xinjian asked. The fourth prince smiled. Eldest brother's way of doing things is to gather all the authority and resources into his hands, using his will to rule over the entire country. If this succeeds, the empire might really reach an unprecedented level. However, I know that as long as the Church of Universal Truth is around, eldest brother won't be allowed to succeed easily. On the contrary, second brother's way of doing things does not seem like much, but it's actually like a spring breeze and rain, slowly changing the entire country's foundation bit by bit. In comparison, I'm naturally more supportive of second brother's methods. Fang Xinjian nodded. However, everything still depends on one's abilities. Right now, the second prince is training in seclusion. If he's unable to successfully take the final step and advance to the divine level, then there's no need to talk about anything else. No matter how good the policies are, it'll be useless. That's how it is. The fourth prince looked at Fang Xinjian and said, "However, eldest brother made a mistake, while second brother made a correct choice. He has you now. When you were still a knight, you single-handedly chased after Garcia's great warriors for 3,000 miles. After becoming a conferred knight, he had been guiding his subordinates. Even when faced with the evil of the Serene Shrine, he did not lower his head in the slightest. He even dared to face the mages directly. From the way you've been doing things all this while, as well as the unyieldingness in your martial will, I can tell that you're a person who repays kindness and enmity. It's just like your sword art. You'd rather break than bend." The fourth prince sighed and said, "And no one had expected that your talent in sword arts has reached such a level. You might not be the strongest swordsman in the world right now, but you've become a demigod within 2 years, picked up the Supreme Chief's Astral Obscurity sword on the spot, and now fought against the Serene Shrine single-handedly with just one sword. I dare say that in the entire world, there's no one who could be a match for you in terms of sword arts talent. What on earth are you trying to say?" Fang Xinjian's eyes flickered as he asked. He had not expected that this fourth prince of the royal family, the prince who had joined the Holy See of Truth, seemed to have a deep understanding of him. "I want to work together with you." The fourth prince smiled. "I believe in your character and character. I shouldn't be at a disadvantage if I work together with you." "Work together?" Fang Xinjian looked at Prince Philip and said, "You have the help of a divine-level expert. Why you still need my cooperation?" Philip smiled bitterly and said, "Do you think that I can do things as I please?" The Steel Lion Kingdom in the north has never given up on heading south. To their north is the Papal State, the Holy See of Truth. They don't dare to offend the Holy See of Truth, so they've naturally set their sights on us. I need to keep watch over the BI's region at all times and can't relax in the slightest. Moreover, as a divine-level expert and a relative of the Emperor, the King and the Abyss Lord have never been at ease with me. They keep a close eye on me at all times. Therefore, I can't do as I please. Fang Xingjian asked, "Won't there be suspicions between the King and the Abyss Lord?" The Empire's system was that in every generation of princes, one would ascend to the throne and become the Empire's king, while the other would lead the ancient path of hell and pass down the royal family's legacy. However, by right, the two of them represented different influences. No matter how good their relationship was, it was very likely that they would be suspicious of each other. However, by the looks of it, the current king and the Abyss Lord did not seem to have such a phenomenon. Hearing Fang Xingjian's question, the fourth prince shook his head and said, "The relationship between father and uncle isn't that simple. The two of them have seamless cooperation, and there won't be any suspicions between them. Moreover, their abilities are unfathomable, and their accumulations are great, far surpassing our imagination. It's been a long time since the world's metamorphosis, and we have no idea how much they've attained in their breakthroughs. In fact, before the world's metamorphosis, no matter how amazing a genius was, they were only at tier 1 of the divine level. Therefore, they were all accumulating and comprehending their own realms. Now that the path above the divine level has been opened, all the divine level experts are starting to improve by leaps and bounds. All right, let's not talk about them anymore. Fang Xingjian, do you know? As the world's metamorphosis continues, all sorts of treasures from ancient times and ancient times will be revived. These are all things that the divine level experts from the past hid, doing for the sake of humanity's future impact. The treasures of the divine level experts from the past. Fang Xingjian was stunned for a moment. That's right. Each time the world's metamorphosis occurs, it means that the next onslaught is coming. In order to fend off the onslaught, many knowledgeable people from the past have prepared many powerful weapons, martial arts, and resources for the future generations, the fourth prince said. It's a pity that they're still unable to wipe out humanity's ambitions. The world's great calamity is right before our eyes. But as our strength increases, many people will develop ambitions that they did not have in the past. Not only will it be hard for most of the influences to join forces, but there will also be even more conflicts than before. It can be said that each onslaught is a great change in the human influences. If we want to fight for a place in this magnificent era, other than to keep on strengthening ourselves, we also need to fight for the wealth left behind by the sages of the past to strengthen our accumulations. Chapter 556. It's impossible for a person's ambition to disappear. Moreover, if one doesn't even have ambition, then they won't have the desire to improve, Fang Xingjian said with a nod. It seems that you know the location of some treasures? The fourth prince smiled. I'm not afraid to tell you that although I'm a believer of the God of universal truth, I've actually received a portion of the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's legacy from the ancient Jade dynasty. The Hades vault left behind by the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor has never appeared. However, in recent months, I've sensed that it's getting restless and is about to appear. This shows how difficult the 7th onslaught will be. I wish to make an agreement with you. I hope that you'll be able to help me get the Senluo 6 Heaven sword from the Hades vault. This sword is of great importance to me, and in return. With that, the fourth prince pierced a distant, and mysterious sword intent into Fang Xingjian's consciousness. I know that you're a genius in sword arts. This sword attack is the 6 heaven-soaring swords created by the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. It breaks through the barriers of sword arts and is unprecedented. Xingjian, your sword arts cultivation is high, so please correct me. The Senluo 6 Heaven sword was clearly the mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's accompanying sword. Since ancient times in Miracle World, the sword had always been the most respected among the weapons. Among the many generations of experts, there were many who used sword arts. Therefore, among the rulers of the many dynasties, most of their most powerful weapons were the treasured swords they carried with them. For example, the Sun Dynasty's Divine Sun Emperor's Great Solar Nine Dragons Divine Sword, or the Jade Dynasty's Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's Sunluo Six Heavens Sword from 5,000 years ago that the fourth prince had mentioned. Since there were treasured swords, there would naturally be sword arts as well. The 6 heaven-soaring swords that the fourth prince had imparted to him was a unique sword technique of the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. It specialized in condensing sword intent, shaking one's martial will, and attacking one's consciousness. It was a supreme sword art. Right now, when the fourth prince attacked Feng Xingjian with the 6 heaven-soaring swords' sword intent, Feng Xingjian immediately felt the consciousness throughout his body stirring. It was as if under the impact of this sword intent, his consciousness wanted to leave his body and be sent flying. What would happen if a person's consciousness were to be sent flying out from the tremors? When a normal person's consciousness separated from their body, it wouldn't take long for their soul to dissipate and directly become a vegetable. Even if a conferred knight cultivated a technique to separate his consciousness from his physical body, he would not be able to do something like this for a long period of time. This 6 heaven-soaring swords, however, had the power to shake one's consciousness out of one's physical body. It revealed a boundless mysteriousness and maliciousness, like the mysteriousness and sinister of the 9 underworlds. However, what kind of genius was Feng Xingjian? With just a slight tremble, he activated his sword intent to counterattack. His sword intent was a combination of hundreds of sword techniques that he had learned. In the end, he had experienced life and death on Earth, and he had obtained it through death. With this activation, streams of deathly aura that were like ink soared into the sky. The fourth prince and Philip seemed to be able to smell a strong stench of blood and deathly aura. It was as if they had been dragged into death. As the 2 sword intents clashed, crackling sounds rang out from the void. Fortunately, the 2 of them were just exchanging blows and did not go all out. Thus, neither of them were injured. The fourth prince cried out in surprise, "Death? Lonely? Emptiness? Is this a sword intent that you developed yourself, Xingjian? What a terrifying sword intent. How did you develop it?" "It's not complete yet." Feng Xingjian shook his head and said, "This Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor's 6 heaven-soaring swords, on the other hand, is a little interesting. If I'm not wrong, this sword technique doesn't have any specific sword moves. All of its techniques focus on condensing sword intents and attacking one's consciousness. Right?" "That's right." The fourth prince looked at Feng Xingjian with an admiring tone and said, "As expected of a rare genius in sword arts. To think that you've managed to guess most of my 6 heaven-soaring swords with just one clash. This sword technique is called the Unparalleled Heart Sword. When it was passed down, there was only a portrait of the Mystic Abyss Heavenly Emperor. It does not pursue any specific moves or styles. All of the crux lies in the word heart. When performed by those below the divine level, they can slash out one's consciousness from their physical body, causing their consciousness to be in a state of chaos or even completely extinguish. After attaining the divine level, one can truly condense one's martial will, or sword intent, into his 6 heaven-soaring swords, slashing out consciousness and shaking up one's will. It's extremely powerful. This method of condensing one's will and forging one's physical body is like the Yama's sacred physique of morality that eldest brother passed down to his son. Feng Xingjian nodded. Again, it was rare to see another divine-level expert's legacy sword technique, so Feng Xingjian's interest was piqued. A hint of excitement flashed in his eyes, and he immediately started an exchange of sword arts with the fourth prince. Their sword intents clashed and moved about in void space. Each time they clashed intensely, it was as if many bombs had exploded in his mind. Each time their sword intents clashed, it was not only an exchange of sword theories, but also a form of tempering of one's martial will. However, Feng Xingjian's learning speed was far too terrifying. In just a short half an hour, he was already able to imitate the 6 heaven-soaring swords with his own sword intents, almost causing the fourth prince to be pushed back repeatedly, his countenance turning pale. If it was not because he still wanted to learn from the fourth prince's sword intense, he would have won long ago. Philip let out a long laugh and said, "Xinjiang, be careful. I'm coming as well." As he spoke, another gush of sword intent soared into the sky. This sword intent was different from Fang Xinjiang's deathly sword intent and the fourth prince's 6 heaven-soaring swords. At the start, it was just a faint light. However, as the sword intent circulated, the faint light soon developed into a light pillar that connected through the heavens and the earth. It was as if it wanted to reconstruct every inch of the world. This was the unparalleled sword intent condensed from the holy sea of truth's universal truth longsword. It was filled with an aura of light, justice, and uniqueness. Clearly, although both the fourth prince and Prince Philip were members of the royal family and had also learned the martial arts of the ancient path of hell, they had their own encounters and had each achieved different martial arts paths. Philip's sword intent swept out, shattering the fourth prince's and Fang Xinjiang's wandering sword intents and forcing them to retract back into their physical bodies. The 3 of them exchanged blows, and as their sword intents collided, it was as if they were continuously exchanging sword arts and tempering their martial wills. Fang Xinjiang felt that his sword arts, which had stagnated for a long time, had once again experienced explosive growth. After all, the fourth prince had received the legacy of a divine-level sword technique, while Prince Philip himself was a divine-level expert. It was a rare opportunity for them to exchange pointers. Furthermore, after Fang Xinjiang had created his own 5 god-slaying swords, his sword arts level had reached a bottleneck. However, such exchanges allowed him to improve once again. After 7 days and 7 nights passed by, a loud bang rang out in void space, and all 3 of their sword intents retracted back into their physical bodies. Philip smiled in satisfaction. Looking at the 2 young men who had their eyes closed, he sighed and said, "It's true that talented people emerge in every generation. The sword arts talent of the 2 of you is something I've never seen before in my life. Your futures are limitless." Chapter 557. The fourth prince was the first to open his eyes. His eyes seemed to be like the netherworld, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Hearing that, he looked at Fang Xinjiang and said, "Compared to Xinjiang, this bit of talent of mine is really nothing much." Fang Xinjiang opened his eyes as well, and a deathly aura flashed past his body. He looked at the fourth prince and asked, "Aren't you afraid that after I learn this sword technique, I won't help you to get the Hades vault?" The fourth prince said, "Then I can only blame myself for having misjudged you. However, my judgment is very accurate. In this world, there are some people who are cunning and ever-changing, some who are deep and vicious, and some who are open and above board. There are no good and bad people among these people. However, in order to become an expert and condense a martial will, one must have unwavering determination and will to persevere on their path. I feel that you don't have that ever-changing and doubtful character of a ruler. Instead, you have the character of a swordsman who keeps to your word, taking revenge for enmity and repaying kindness for kindness. I believe that my judgment is definitely not wrong." Fang Xinjiang nodded. "If the Hades vault appears, you can come and look for me at any time. However, if there are other sword technique legacies among them, you must share them with me." The fourth prince broke into a satisfied smile. "It's a deal." Fang Xinjiang closed his eyes and continued to comprehend his sword arts. This time around, after 7 days and 7 nights of sword arts exchange, his sword arts had reached a new level. In particular, he had learned the profoundness of the 6 heaven-soaring swords and had even synthesized it into the 5 god-slaying swords. Right now, each and every one of his moves had a power that could shake the opponent's consciousness and crush the opponent's consciousness. His attributes had also become: name Fang Xinjiang, age 19, occupation, heavenly sword, sovereign level, 29 strength, 326 plus 21 agility, 324 plus 21 reaction, 229 endurance, 210 flexibility, 209 ether synchronization rate, 100%. The attributes above come into effect once the prodigious astral divine powers waves is activated. Due to perfect muscles, plus 21 in strength and agility, 10% of the endurance attribute, skills, techniques, boundaries negation, level 45 god-slaying swords, white bone divine weapon, heaven's volition sword in 10 internal specialties, 1,440 external specialties, 9,270 waves level 10 prodigious astral divine powers waves mental cultivation method, level 10 universal sword dominance lunisolar. The continuous cultivation had allowed his strength to increase explosively again compared to when he had returned to Shanghai. However, just then, he suddenly opened his eyes and turned his head to look in the direction of the great western region. To think that you still dare to come and court death. A moment later, his body dashed out with a swoosh. He quickly disappeared from everyone's line of sight as he rushed towards Atlantis. While Feng Xingjian, the fourth prince, and Prince Philip were conversing for 7 days and 7 nights, a series of loud laughter rang out in the desert of the eastern sand region, as if wanting to shake off all the clouds in the sky. The fifth prince's aura swelled up, and the black demonic chi seemed to have condensed into a material state. It burned intensely around his body, releasing crackling sounds. It was as if the stars in the sky were exploding one after another. This was his martial will. In the past, his martial will had been scattered by Feng Xingjian's attack. However, right now it was extremely strong and condensed, almost reaching an extreme below the divine level. All right, that's great. Master, I've been under the onslaught of your martial will for half a month. I finally managed to condense my martial will and get rid of all the impurities. Right now, I'm just a step away from attaining the material state of a Tier 1 divine level martial will. Furthermore, over the past half a month, I've refined my fist arts once again and combined them with my martial will. I've turned my killing technique, Taiji Fist, into the Sovereign Fist, and my fist arts have improved once again. The fifth prince broke into a confident smile, as if he was a god from the heavens who had everything in his grasp. All level 29 experts had their own signature killing techniques, which are usually created by combining many killing techniques they had learned in the past. The strongest killing technique that the fifth prince had synthesized was Taiji Fist. However, over the past half a month of cultivation, his fist arts had improved further, turning Taiji Fist into the Sovereign Fist. He thought to himself, if I were to strive for the divine level now, I'd probably succeed on the spot. However, I won't strive for it now. No one in the world knows how to attain perfection in the physical particles. Even eldest brother doesn't know, but I do. Physical particles are similar to fusion and fission. As long as I have enough time, I'll be able to comprehend the principles of the microscopic world and reach the unprecedented 5 tiers of perfection. By then, when I strive for the divine level, I'll be invincible. Thinking of this, he suddenly looked at a ball of light at the side. He saw a crimson gold armor that emitted waves of powerful aura constantly moving up and down. The armor's body was covered with layers of patterns that looked like spatial ripples. There was also an aura that seemed to be near but not far, and seemed to be near but not near. It was as if the armor would disappear the moment it was touched. Simultaneously, Tian Yi's voice rang out from within. I've already refined this 4-eyed heavenly winged beast of yours into a divine remains equipment. Based on what you said, if this 4-eyed heavenly winged beast matures, it will be a Tier 2 divine level ferocious beast, possessing the power to turn its will into flesh and blood. It's a pity that this 4-eyed heavenly winged beast of yours has yet to mature. I can only refine out its characteristics, but I can't really let it unleash the power of a Tier 2 divine level 4-eyed heavenly winged beast. As Tian Yi spoke, the set of armor shot out and covered the fifth prince's body as if it had a spirit of its own. In the blink of an eye, the pure golden armor changed, encompassing the fifth prince in a layer of golden light. After putting on the 4-eyed heavenly winged armor, the entire armor seemed to be breathing and having a heartbeat, as if it was alive. The even more terrifying thing was that as the fifth prince activated his martial will, his physical body gradually merged with the armor. Under the transformation of the armor, his martial will kept on increasing his power. He turned into a stream of light and appeared before the fifth prince. He said calmly, "With this four-eyed heavenly winged armor, you can directly use your martial will to increase your power. You can also use your will to replenish your flesh and blood. As long as you wear this set of armor, your will not be extinguished, and your physical body will not die." Sensing that his martial will was being augmented endlessly into his physical body under the effect of the armor, and seething power was being emitted incessantly, the fifth prince instantly had the feeling that the greater one's heart was, the stronger one's power would be. "Thank you, Master. During this half a month, I feel that my power has increased by over 10 times. In less than a year's time, I'll be able to successfully strive for the divine level." Saying this, the fifth prince's face suddenly revealed a hint of savagery. He thought of how Feng Xingjian had defeated and killed him. "However, before I enter seclusion to strive for the divine level, I still have a small wish that I need to fulfill. It's to kill that Feng Xingjian. If I don't kill him, I won't be able to quell the fury in my heart, and I won't be able to strive for the divine level." He frowned. He felt that the name Feng Xingjian seemed to make him feel extremely disgusted, and even a little terrified. Chapter 558. Feng Xingjian is the person who defeated you. That's right. The fifth prince said viciously. He said to be the #1 genius in sword arts in the empire in recent years. Some ignorant people even compare him to the #1 genius in the entire world. It's really hilarious. Feng Xingjian is at most an expert amongst demigods. He relied on some fortuitous encounters to temper his physical body to an extremely powerful state, allowing him to defeat me previously. However, the stronger I encounter, the stronger I become. After suffering defeat, I gained experience. With Master's help, now that I'm one with my armor, I'll be able to crush him with a flip of my palm." At the thought of this, the fifth prince felt exhilarated. Then he suddenly looked toward Tian Yi with a deep gaze. The fifth prince said, "But that guy has my second brother behind him, as well as a group of idiots from the great western city supporting him. If I were to head over alone, I wouldn't have complete confidence. Master, would you be able to make a trip with me? With your abilities, it'll naturally be easy for you to hold the fort for me." During this period of time, the fifth prince had been continuously receiving attacks from Tian Yi's martial will and receiving all sorts of training. Therefore, he was increasingly in awe of this so-called master of his. Although Tian Yi might not really be the #1 in the world, his martial will was powerful, condensed, and the violent and terrifying power it contained was a ghastly sight. With Tian Yi holding the fort, coupled with the fifth prince's current abilities, he had absolute confidence that he would be able to find trouble with Feng Xingjian in the great western city. Tian Yi's frown deepened. He did not know why, but when he heard the words Feng Xingjian and the great western city consecutively, he felt extremely irritated. However, he could not think of why he was feeling irritated and could only continue to frown. "Why do I feel so annoyed when I hear the name Feng Xingjian? I've clearly never met this person before. This is really strange." Tian Yi searched through his mind again, but to no avail. He could only shake his head and give up. "That's fine too. I'll head to the great western city to take a look and see what kind of expert is able to defeat you. If he can really pique my interest, I can also give him some pointers and let him know that there's always someone better out there." At the next moment, Tian Yi's light body swayed abruptly and darted into the fifth prince's physical body. "Let's go. With me here, no one in the world can do anything to you. This body of yours is the safest place in the world." In an instant, the fifth prince let out a series of long howls as he tore through the clouds and soared up to a height of 10,000 meters in the sky. His body paused slightly as he identified his direction and flew toward the great western region. Right now, Feng Xingjian's physical body and armor had merged into one, It was no longer easy for him to pierce through the clouds in space. In less than 10 minutes, he had already crossed the Great Region and arrived in the sky above the Great Western Region. He then slowed down slightly and arrived above the Great Western Region's Regional Academy. Excellent. This Fang Xinjian's base is in the Great Western Region Regional Academy. I'll first kill a batch of his subordinates and let him feel great heartache. At the thought of this, the corners of the fifth prince's lips curled up into a hint of a savage smile. A martial will that feared nothing in the world soared into the sky, turning into an overwhelming black, demonic aura that gathered behind him. The prowess of an emperor, the fist of an overlord. The strong engulfs the world, taking everything and doing everything. This is a good chance for me to try out my newly cultivated sovereign fist. An explosive rumble rang out in the sky as the fifth prince's sovereign fist struck out in the direction of the academy. Banging sounds of explosions rang out incessantly in the air. It was as if an emperor had been enraged and a calamity had descended from the heavens. The entire academy was encompassed by an aura of despair and terror. It was as if with the fury of this emperor, even the world was terrified. The terrifying fist force was like a five-clawed golden dragon, plunging down rapidly toward the center of the academy. Just the sight of the terrifying power it contained was enough to make one's heart tremble. However, it was not as if there were no capable people in the regional academy. Almost at the instant the fifth prince struck out with his fist, countless streams of auras soared into the sky from the academy. The one in the lead was head of department James. With a long bellow, his fists turned into streams of meteors that struck out. It was the Imperial Meteor Fist again. Each punch contained terrifying gravitational waves and was a terrifying fist technique that could kill everything in the world. However, this time around, when the Imperial Meteor Fist struck out by James collided with the fifth prince's yellow fist, there were no problems in terms of power. However, a terrifying aura that seemed to engulf everything in the world gushed out. The extremely intense martial will almost made James want to turn and flee or submit immediately. This was the terrifying prowess of the fifth prince's self-created sovereign fist. It was not in terms of physical power, but in terms of martial will. With this punch, the prowess of a sovereign engulfing the world and controlling the mortal world struck out at the other party's mind. As long as one's martial will was not as strong as the fifth prince's, they would either have to submit or turn and flee. They might not even be able to break through this layer of mental pressure for the rest of their lives. In that instant, James was pushed back repeatedly. Under the impact of the waves of sovereign fist's will, he was utterly defeated. It was as if he was unable to summon up any power to resist. Scram! At the next moment, the fifth prince grabbed hold of the opportunity and pressed down with a backhand. Like a super big rubber ball, no matter how James punched out, the fifth prince absorbed and rebounded them. He then gathered their powers and smashed them into James, instantly knocking him down from the sky and smashing him onto the ground. Within a short period of time, countless buildings had collapsed. However, in the instant that the fifth prince and James exchanged blows, countless teachers from the regional academy had also dashed up into the sky. The person in the lead was the leader of the sword arts team, Hops, who had once invited Fang Xinjian to the sword tower to research sword arts together. Hops slashed out toward the fifth prince's waist with sword cheese that tore through the air, bringing along a prowess that seemed to be able to slash the heavens and cleave the earth. Simultaneously, another two teachers, one using a spear and the other a staff respectively, sent waves of majestic power exploding from behind the fifth prince. They brought about a myriad of sparks, and thunderbolts turned into a tornado of thunder and fire, sweeping out toward the fifth prince. A bunch of trash dares to make a move against me. I'll let you guys see what the world's best fist art is. Violent martial will swept across the sky along with endless demonic intents, gushing into the minds of the three people. Remember, being defeated by this punch of mine will be your lifetime's glory. At the next moment, gusts of strong gales accompanied the fifth prince's movements, and streams of thunderbolts exploded in his body. Sparks burst out from every single cell in his body, and waves of intense gravitational waves extended out along with his will. At this moment, the four types of powers, wind, thunder, earth, and fire, exploded in the fifth prince's body. It was as if he was a giant that had engulfed the entire world, repeatedly engulfing it. Chapter 559. The eyelids of the Sword Tower's leader, Hops, twitched violently. These waves of powers were too astonishing, especially when the other party kept on crushing their martial wills. It gave him the urge to escape quickly and escape. In the next instant, the wind, thunder, earth, and fire gathered together, turning into waves of power that were as black as ink. Just as this gush of power was about to explode, a light pillar rose up from the ground and pierced toward the sky, completely encompassing the power that the fifth prince and himself had gathered. Then a series of world-shaking explosions took place. If the power that the fifth prince had gathered earlier could be said to be astonishing, giving off the feeling that it could destroy the entire regional academy, then the power contained in this seething light pillar was so powerful that no one could calculate its exact prowess. It was as if even the entire great western city would not be able to withstand a single blow from this attack. Raging shock waves gushed forth, and everyone felt as if they had been surrounded and attacked by countless conferred knights' reduced force fields in this instant. They had no choice but to retreat rapidly. It was only after they were several kilometers away that the shock waves gradually dissipated. It was only then that everyone had the time to look toward the sky. Accompanied by strong gales, the exploding fireball and smoke were all swept away. The fifth prince swatted away the smoke and dust from the explosion as if he was swatting away dust. His entire body was encompassed by a thick layer of golden light. Clearly, the earlier attack had been completely fended off by his divine remains equipment. James and Hops were both secretly astonished. Who on earth is this man in golden armor? What violent fist technique and what a powerful fist intent. Then they saw that Tyrant was already standing before the fifth prince without them knowing when he had started. James, Hops, and the others did not know much about this man who had been brought back by Feng Xingjian, but had never done anything other than eat and sleep, dozing off on the sofa with his eyes closed. However, by the looks of it, he had been the one who had fended off the golden-armored man earlier. Clearly, his abilities were not to be underestimated. Sensing all these, James and Hops exchanged a glance and smiled bitterly. The two of them had been the overlords of a region, existences who could be ranked in the top 100 in the empire. In particular, after James had stepped into the first tier of demigod, he had been in high spirits. However, by the looks of it, with the world's metamorphosis, more and more experts had appeared. It seemed that even a demigod with one tier of perfection would no longer be able to dominate the world. This was all because they had followed Feng Xingjian. With Feng Xingjian's abilities, his enemies were naturally the top-notch characters. Otherwise, they would have been killed by Feng Xingjian. Otherwise, with James's demigod level of perfection, he would have been able to dominate a region for a short period of time. In the sky, Tyrant yawned and looked at the fifth prince, who was clad in golden armor. Suddenly, he sniffed and smiled. That fifth prince? The fifth prince was now. With the fifth tyrant and the fifth prince had recognized the fifth prince. Tyrants S and Fong SS and. With Tyrant's current strength and sensitivity, he could easily determine his identity from his scent, body, and aura. However, what astonished the fifth prince even more was the god-perishing palm that the other party had performed earlier. Its prowess was world-shaking, and even the fifth prince, who was wearing a divine remains equipment, felt that it was hard for him to fend it off. Moreover, it was very similar to the attack Feng Xingjian had performed previously. Thinking of this, he narrowed his eyes and asked, "Who are you? What's his relationship with Feng Xingjian?" Tyrant chuckled. "We're just friends. What's wrong? What kind of fist technique did you practice? Did you come back to seek revenge? But looking at your current strength, you can't even beat me. Taking revenge on him might be a little difficult. Courting death. Waves of martial will augmented the fifth prince's body, and he instantly broke through sound barriers, bringing along waves of supersonic shock waves as he charged out toward Tyrant. He punched out with unrivaled ferocity, and his entire fist and arm were like a raging dragon, smashing out toward Tyrant's face. With an explosive boom, the fist smashed on a Tyrant's face without holding anything back. However, it was as if an ordinary person had used their fist to smash on a titanium alloy. Other than a slight tremble to his body, there was not even a hint of injury left behind. This was the current toughness of Tyrant's physical body. After engulfing the bodies of two divine-level experts, the toughness of his physical body was almost only slightly inferior to that of Feng Xinjian, who had activated 10,710 specialty seeds. Tyrant grinned obediently and said, "It doesn't hurt or itch. How about this? I'll only use my feet to fight with you. Every time I attack, it'll be my loss." Ignorant. The fifth prince let out a cold laugh and performed the sovereign fist at full power. As he performed the fist technique, it truly displayed the fifth prince's outstanding talent in the fist technique. It was not just a simple fist technique. The fifth prince's sovereign fist contained all sorts of barehanded techniques from various claw techniques, finger techniques, palm techniques, grappling techniques, wrestling, and so on. The domineering aura that seemed to engulf the world, the sun, and the moon, as well as the technique of stacking and rebounding as the circulation of power were like the pinnacle of a fist technique. However, this time around, the fifth prince's sovereign fist had met its match. When faced with the fifth prince's fist technique, Tyrant did not care about his opponent's moves or strength at all. He just kept on sending out kicks. If he could fend off the punches, he would fend them off with a kick. If he could not fend off the punches, he would take them head-on. Crossing his arms before his chest, Feng Xinjian's legs turned into a series of afterimages as they pressed down toward the fifth prince. Waves of power that were like the pressure of Mount Tai caused the fifth prince to be a little flustered, causing him to keep on releasing and transforming force. Furthermore, the fifth prince's fist intense kept on crushing down, but the effects were not great. Tyrant had received the impact of Feng Xinjian's martial will for a long period of time. Although the attacking prowess of his martial will was not strong, his defense and endurance were sufficient. Otherwise, how could he have been easily suppressed by the fifth prince's fist intense? However, the fifth prince could also sense that although he had not succeeded in the first attempt, as they exchanged blows time and time again, his fist intense kept on crushing down. Feng Xinjian's consciousness kept on trembling, showing signs of being defeated. It'll take at most 2 minutes for my sovereign fist intense to completely crush him. Just then, Tyrant let out a maniacal laugh and kicked out toward the fifth prince's stomach. The fifth prince let out a cold snort and pressed down with his sovereign fist. His hands sank down as if the heavens were collapsing and the earth was sinking, negating Tyrant's kick. However, Tyrant quickly retracted his leg and shot out at lightning speed. The fifth prince let out a furious bellow helplessly and met the fifth prince's kick head-on with a bang. To his surprise, he felt a numbing sensation at the bottom of his foot. However, Tyrant continued to kick out toward the fifth prince as if nothing had happened. It was negated by the fifth prince's spiral palm force, and the fifth prince's kick landed on his stomach. However, at the next moment, the fifth prince's countenance changed, and an expression like that of a wild beast flashed in his eyes. You actually rushed into my stomach. That's enough." A voice rang out from the fifth prince's body. It was Tianyi's voice. Even an idiot would be able to sense the fury contained in Tianyi's voice. It sounded calm, but under that calmness were flames that could incinerate everything. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt. "This is too ugly. I'll take action personally." Chapter 560. As a white light shone on Tyrant and passed through his body, Tyrant's expression stiffened slightly. At the next moment, his will was completely suppressed by Tianyi. The difference between their martial wills was far too great. Tyrant's will was compressed into a corner in his consciousness. It was like a huge beast that kept on bellowing furiously. Tian Yi smiled slowly as he looked at Tyrant, who was being suppressed. He slowly took over Tyrant's body, controlling it. Too weak. Why is it that the people of the world are so weak, causing me to feel so lonely? Is it so difficult to find an opponent? Tyrant smiled, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He looked at his body and hands and said, "This physical body is not bad. Why don't I use this physical body to convert the power of my will and try to strive for the divine level?" Thinking of how he could convert all the power of this powerful physical body into his will to strive for the divine level, with the exuberance of his vital energy and blood, how powerful would he be when striving for the divine level? When a person's mental state was good and his will was strong, his body would become healthy as well. When a person was plagued with illnesses, his spirit would naturally be dispirited and his will would be weak. There had always been a secret connection between the will and the physical body that influenced and transformed each other. When knights were striving for the divine level, they would usually make use of this connection to strengthen their martial wills with their extremely powerful physical bodies, breaking through the restraints of the divine level in one go. Even Tian Yi revealed a curious expression as to how far he would be able to go after refining this physical body. On the ground, James and the others all revealed astonished expressions. Zhou Xingwen and the others also rushed over. They looked at the two black dots in the sky and asked, "How is it?" James's countenance was grim. Mr. Tyrant seems to have been suppressed. Weren't they still on par with each other earlier? Anderson asked puzzledly. It seems that someone else has made a move and suppressed Tyrant's will. James frowned, his eyes filled with worry. Mr. Tyrant's physical body is so strong that it's 1 in a million. To be able to suppress his consciousness and take over his body so easily in an instant, this person's strength is not to be underestimated. The head of the sword arts team, Hops, also revealed an astonished expression. For him to be able to suppress Tyrant so easily, doesn't that mean that as long as he wants to, he'll be able to suppress all of us with a single thought? Furthermore, it seems like that person only sent a wisp of his will. His true body isn't here. At the thought of this, James exhaled and said, "To be able to suppress Tyrant with a single will, this kind of strength, could it be that his true form is a divine level expert?" Thinking of this, everyone's faces were filled with confusion, nervousness, and fear. Zhou Xingwen mumbled, "A divine level expert. Wouldn't that mean that no one in the entire Great Western region would be a match for him? Even if Xinjiang were to return now, it would be of no use?" Saying this, the countenances of everyone in the surroundings changed. At this moment, the strength that Tian Yi had displayed in such a simple manner was simply astonishing. However, just then, a stream of sword chi cut across the sky. It was as if the Milky Way had plunged down from the 9 heavens, encompassing the 5th prince and Tyrant. Just as Tian Yi was suppressing Tyrant with his terrifying martial will, and even wanting to refine Tyrant's body to replenish his will, striving for the divine level and strengthening himself, an astonishing stream of sword chi descended from the sky, tearing through the clouds and space. Wherever it passed by, it would distort light and space, wanting to turn everything before it into dust. With a single sword attack, it sliced through the air and formed a 1,000-meter long sword chi, even distorting light and space. To be able to do this, it was naturally Feng Xinjiang who had condensed one. 0.8 billion physical particles and 10,710 specialty seeds, breaking through limits. With this sword chi stretching across the sky, both Tian Yi and the 5th prince immediately felt an intense sense of danger. Both of them retreated and dodged. After forcing the two of them back with a single sword attack, Feng Xinjiang stood high up in the sky, frowning slightly. He looked at Tyrant and the 5th prince and said coldly, "5th prince, you still dare to come and court death?" The 5th prince laughed maniacally and said, "Feng Xinjiang, do you really think that you're a great talent and that you're unrivaled in the world? Previously, you were just lucky and managed to surpass me temporarily. The truth has proven that I'm the true main character of history, the person who is the trend of destiny. The reason I've come to the great western region today is to wipe out your entire clan. Everyone related to you must die. Ignorant. Fong Xingjian let out a cold laugh and looked in Tyron's direction, asking, "And who are you?" Tian E controlled Tyron's body, and the corners of his lips curled up into a faint smile. "Although you're very powerful, you're not at the divine level yet. You're still a little weak and don't have the right to know who I am. However, if you're able to escape with your life from us today, then you'll have the right to know my name." Interesting. When I fought against the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord, he didn't even have 30% of your arrogance. Streams of sword light burst out from Fong Xingjian's eyes as he said coldly, "Since that's the case, I'll first kill the fifth prince and then pull you out from Tyron's body. You guys could try your best to fend them off." As he spoke, Fong Xingjian slashed out a sword chi that was several thousand meters long, tearing through the entire sky. Faced with this astonishing sword chi, the two of them dodged separately once again. However, this time around, the sword chi was not the sword chi that Fong Xingjian had hurriedly slashed out when he had just rushed over. Moreover, how could the sword chi that Fong Xingjian had unleashed when he got serious be so easy to dodge? This was especially after the exchange of 7 days and 7 nights. His sword arts had improved tremendously once again, and in that instant, the sword chi disappeared, darting into spatial gaps. What? To think that even the sword chis he performed can dart into spatial gaps. His sword arts have reached such a level. Right now, the Supreme Chief's astral obscurity sword isn't even fit to carry his shoes. These thoughts flashed past the fifth prince's mind at lightning speed. However, before the sword chi could reach him, Fong Xingjian's actual body had already appeared from the spatial gaps in a flash, appearing before the fifth prince. Simultaneously, his sword fingers pierced through the air, tapping toward the fifth prince's head. Under this sword attack, the aura of death gushed forth. It was as if his life was no longer in his control, as if he was already dead. Fong Xingjian's attacks came one after another, showing no mercy at all. What a terrifying martial will. The fifth prince knew that he had reached a moment of life and death. At this moment, he also unleashed his full power. Sovereign Fist, world-toppling fist. This punch struck out with the heaviness of mountains and rivers. The fifth prince's fist seemed to display the prince of mountains and rivers, the sun, moon, and stars, as well as the homes of commoners. It was as if the entire world, the entire human world, was within this punch of his, and, as he struck out with this punch, it came pressing down explosively, engulfing the world, turning the world into his own. This was the disposition that the fifth prince had nurtured from his repeated victories and repeated cultivation. This caused his fist intent to have an especially powerful feeling. Right now, everything was smashed toward Fong Xingjian in this punch. The concept contained within this attack was as if a sovereign had tossed the entire world to you. It all depended on whether you could take on the entire world or not. How domineering was the fifth prince? Usually, he would want to take over everything and seize everything. However, this move was the exact opposite, wanting to give up all the world that he had taken over to his opponent. It could be said that ever since this world-toppling fist was created, he would not use it recklessly. The moment he used it, it would represent that he would not stop until one party died. With this punch, it was as if he was punching out the entire world. The fifth prince felt that his entire body was empty, as all of his power, will, and spirit had been condensed into this punch and gushed out. Chapter 561. It had been far too long since the fifth prince had experienced this feeling of his body being empty. After experiencing it with this punch, he gained another level of comprehension. For a sovereign to send out the world requires endless boldness and courage. It's a kind of courageous progress that pursues great freedom and freedom. The fifth prince could sense that his fist art's realm had risen once again. After this battle, he would definitely be able to reach a new realm. This punch was filled with all 5 colors. It would be able to remain unmoved when faced with the world. The will contained within was so terrifying that it could cause anyone to be intoxicated by it. Even if they knew that it was fake, they would not be willing to dodge it. However, when faced with the punch that the 5th prince had sent out, Feng Xingjian did not show any reluctance to part with it, nor did he receive it head-on. He disappeared once again, passing through spatial gaps and suddenly appearing next to the 5th prince. Then he slashed out with his sword. This move of avoiding the 5th prince's attack and striking his weak points was like that of an ancient sword immortal. It also contained a great resolution of, if you were to give me the world, I would not spare a glance at it and would just leave in a flash. It displayed Feng Xingjian's martial will that had broken through life and death, seeking life in the face of death. He had already seen through life and death, let alone a mere world. That final flash into spatial gaps was like going into seclusion, still remaining famous in the world. Then he reappeared and rose up in revolt, shaking up the entire world. With this sword attack from Feng Xingjian, many deep wounds extended out from the 5th prince's divine armor. Terrifying sword force seethed, weakening the 5th prince's divine armor layer by layer. However, as the layers of infiltrating void cut in, the 5th prince's body was already minced into endless blood fog, and he could not even regenerate in time. However, the most terrifying thing was still Feng Xingjian's sword intent attack. I don't want a world. I don't want it even if you give it to me. Now I'll just snatch it over. With this sword attack, the wind and rain swayed. Life and death were in a dilemma. It was also mixed with the concept of the 6 heaven-soaring swords. An explosive boom rang out in void space, and Feng Xingjian had shaken the 5th prince's consciousness out from his physical body. At the sight of this scene, he was about to take action when the sword cheese that had sliced into the spatial gaps earlier suddenly appeared before him with a flash, slashing fiercely toward Tyron's body. Even Tyron would not be able to ignore the sword chi that Feng Xingjian had unleashed with all his might, let alone Tian-Yi, who had just suppressed Tyron's will and was still unfamiliar with this body. He was sent flying thousands of meters away by the sword. However, even so, Tian-Yi was able to recover very quickly. However, it was precisely because of this short moment that Feng Xingjian managed to find an opportunity. Under the 5th prince's astonished gaze, his physical body, which had lost the control of his will, was unable to resist at all. It was shattered from the inside by Feng Xingjian's infiltrating void, exploding into clouds of bloody mist that encompassed the divine armor. No! The 5th prince let out an agonizing cry and wanted to return to his physical body to regenerate it. However, how could Feng Xingjian allow him to do so? With a sweep of his sword fingers, deathly sword intent once again slashed out toward the 5th prince's will. A myriad of black sword intents encompassed the 5th prince's body, instantly causing his will to explode and turn into a mess. At this moment, Tian-Yi finally arrived. Controlling Tyron's body, he struck out with a punch. It was as if he had broken through the restraints of time and space, and a violent power came smashing down. The auras of over 1,440 specialty seeds burst out explosively, turning into streams of aura that soared into the sky. Countless physical particles exploded simultaneously, shooting out a myriad of light rays. At this moment, Tian-Yi had unleashed 99% of Tyron's powers, displaying his extremely exquisite cultivation in suppressing one's will and controlling one's physical body. Faced with this punch from Tyron, which had unleashed almost all of his power, Feng Xingjian was not willing to take it head-on. With a flash, he once again stepped into spatial gaps and then appeared abruptly several thousand meters away, slashing out with his sword over and over again. With each slash, waves of black, deathly sword intents would attack Tyrant. The terrifying sword intents spread out in the air at light speed, instantly piercing into Tyrant's mind and clashing with Tian-Yi's will. Feng Xingjian could even see that in Tyrant's consciousness, there was a huge figure of light standing in the middle, exuding waves of majestic divine might. It was like a divine king in the heavens, sitting in the center of the world and suppressing everything with a flip of its hand. Streams of deathly sword intense slashed onto the figure of light, sending out endless ripples and sparks. There were the sparks of thoughts and the collision of wills. Oh, to think that the slash from Feng Xingzhan's deathly sword intense did not manage to take down Tian Yi. The toughness of Tian Yi's martial will had reached an unbelievable level. Making use of this time, the fifth prince condensed his martial will once again, turning it into a floating phantom image. It was obvious that he had suffered a great deal of damage to his vitality. He looked at Feng Xingzhan with an extremely vengeful and bloodthirsty gaze, and then looked at his own physical body. His physical body had been minced into minced meat by Feng Xingzhan, and blood mist encompassed the divine armor. However, at this moment, there seemed to be a change. The divine armor contracted and contracted. After being scattered by the fifth prince's flesh and blood, it seemed to have come to life and was continuously engulfing and absorbing the fifth prince's flesh and blood. The fifth prince immediately started communicating with Tian Yi through information currents in their consciousness. The fifth prince exclaimed, "My physical body! What's going on?" Tian Yi frowned. It seems that the four-eyed heavenly winged beast's consciousness hasn't faded away even though it's dead. It's been stimulated by your flesh and blood and has awakened. However, it's still in a hazy state right now. But if it continues to absorb like this, it'll probably really come back to life. Xiao He isn't dead? The fifth prince said in surprise. At the next moment, he became a little nervous. Then won't my physical body be gone if it continues to absorb like this? If it's gone, then so be it. When the time comes, you can just cultivate pure martial will with me. The fifth prince said anxiously. How can that do? Master, quickly help me stop it and save my physical body. He still wanted to take over the entire human world and enjoy endless beauties, fine wine, delicacies, and everything else in the world. How could he do that without even his physical body? The communication was completed in an instant. Tian Yi frowned and reached out with a claw, sweeping through the world. It was like an ancient god wanting to capture the sun and the moon as he grabbed out toward the fifth prince's physical body. Violent powers pressed down inch by inch, causing the air to explode and turning the area within a range of 100 meters into a vacuum. Tian Yi's self-created palm technique, #1 palm in the world. However, how could Feng Xingzhan possibly allow him to capture back his physical body? Feng Xingzhan tapped out with his sword, and his fingertip collided with Tian Yi's fist. Amidst the violent tremors, it was as if even the space was going to collapse from the tremors. Streams of thick white force swept out in all directions from the point where their fists and fingers collided. The impact waves sent the divine armor flying out over 1,000 meters, and the fifth prince's physical body, which was on it, was also completely shattered into dust. At the sight of this scene, the fifth prince let out an agonizing cry, and his eyes were filled with endless madness and vengeance. However, Feng Xingzhan did not stop there. The aura of sword intense soared into the air, and with a flash, he appeared behind Tian Yi and tapped out toward Tyron's head. Chapter 562. As Feng Xingzhan slashed down with his sword, it immediately darted into Tian Yi's mind along with seething deathly sword intense, as if wanting to beat his will out completely. Rumble. However, as their wills collided, not only was Tian Yi's violent martial will not beaten out, but it instead swept up the sword intense, wanting to counterattack in a Feng Xingzhan's mind. With this, it revealed how powerful Tian Yi's terrifying martial will had become as he continued to adapt to the world. As for Tyron's head, Tian Yi did not bother to defend it. It was because he knew that Tyron had yet to reach the realm of brain regeneration. If Tian Yi did not wish to kill Tyron, he would not attack his brain. As expected, with a flash, Feng Xingzhan darted into spatial gaps and appeared above Tian Yi once again. This time around, He was even closer to Tian Yi. Another wave of sword intent descended from the sky, as if the entire sky was going to collapse and destroy all life in the world. However, Tian Yi smiled coldly once again. The light figure in his mind punched out with a rumble, and a violent martial will instantly destroyed Feng Xingjian's sword intents. As an existence who could use pure martial will to affect the physical world, Tian Yi was already above Feng Xingjian in terms of pure will. Therefore, for a few consecutive times, Tian Yi ignored Feng Xingjian's physical attacks and merely crushed Feng Xingjian's martial will with each clash of wills. The reason why I've broken through your will time and time again is to plant an image of me as an invincible god of battle in your mind. However, just as Tian Yi was thinking this, Feng Xingjian struck out with his sword once again, and the corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a smile. This time around, Tian Yi instantly broke through Feng Xingjian's will, but he was unable to break through Feng Xingjian's sword force. The most powerful part of this sword attack from Feng Xingjian was the technique in the sword. The sword of infiltrating void and the light pursuit sword ripples were activated at the same time. In this sword attack, there was the mysteriousness of the sword of infiltrating void, as well as the speed of the light pursuit sword ripples. In that instant, over 10 million streams of infiltrating void sword force exploded in Tyron's mind. The terrifying power instantly vaporized his brain completely. If it were Tyron himself, even if Feng Xingjian wanted to attack his brain directly, it would not be that easy. However, Feng Xingjian had chosen not to defend himself several times, and it had already become a habit. Even when his brain was attacked, Tian Yi was still in a daze. To think that he doesn't care about the life of this subordinate? While Zhong Yu was still in a daze, his brain exploded and his skull cracked open. A will of the 6 paths of reincarnation descended from the skies. A person's willpower needed the support of the brain, which was the only way to control the body physiologically. Right now, without the support of his brain and with the consciousness of the 6 heaven-soaring swords, Tian Yi's will finally turned into a light figure and slowly flew out from Tyron's body. An enraged message accompanied his martial will, charging out in all directions at light speed. You're vicious and merciless. To think that in order to chase me out, you even killed a demigod with 3 tiers of perfection just like that. Is that so? Are you sure that he's dead? Wills clashed and information was exchanged. Tian Yi instantly looked in Tyron's direction. In that instant, his mind trembled slightly. To think that Tyron's corpse had started to regenerate? Tian Yi, who had been cultivating in the Peerless sect since he was young, not only did he not know the cultivation method for divine-level experts, but he also did not know about the existence of mages. Tian Yi's rebirth, which defied logic, immediately created a gap in his mind. However, with his cultivation, this gap was at most 1,000th of a second, and he would be able to fill it up in the blink of an eye. However, there was one person present whose sword arts were so powerful that they could capture this gap of 1,000th of a second. Surges of pure black sword light gushed out from Feng Xingjian's body. The Heaven's Volition sword intent was activated. Feng Xingjian had not used the Heaven's Volition sword intent all this while, causing his martial will to be at a disadvantage time and time again. He had even gone to the extent of exploding Tyron's head, allowing Tian Yi to have that instant of a gap in his mind. Feng Xingjian had set up so many moves so that he could unleash the Heaven's Volition sword intent explosively. Boom, 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 boom. In that instant, the light figure that Tian Yi had turned into let out a world-shaking and agonizing cry. Violent martial will was unleashed, and over 1,000 people in the entire regional academy fainted. Countless animals with weaker wills bled from their 7 apertures and died. As for the light figure that Tian Yi had turned into, it was like boiling hot oil, trembling crazily and even starting to melt. The pitch-black Heaven's Volition sword intent was like burning petroleum being poured onto a piece of white paper. In that instant, Tian Yi's martial will was crushed layer by layer, as if it was going to melt completely. Let's go. In that instant, Tion turned into an extremely intense stream of white light and was about to leave at the fifth prince. Right now, both of them were in a state of pure will, and their speed was at light speed. They were no match for Feng Xingjian, but their speed of escaping was not something that Feng Xingjian could match up to. With a flash, they turned into a stream of light that cut across the sky and disappeared completely. To think that they exist in a state of pure will? Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly, and with a flash he traversed a distance of several thousand meters and appeared before the four-eyed heavenly winged beast armor, wanting to take it away. After this divine armor absorbed the fifth prince's flesh and blood, it had gone through an amazing change. It was as if it had evolved like a living creature. However, just as Feng Xingjian reached out to grab the armor, the space suddenly trembled and ripples that were like water waves appeared. At the next moment, a gray palm reached out. The moment this palm appeared, the temperature within a range of 100 lis in the entire Great Western City seemed to have started to rise, and the moisture in the air was decreasing at an astonishing rate. To think that a palm that had appeared out of nowhere was going to cause a 100 lis of barren land? However, faced with this claw that had suddenly appeared and wanted to snatch the divine armor, Feng Xingjian appeared to have expected it. The Heaven's Volition Sword Intent was activated once again, and the instant sword slashed out. There seemed to be an extra second of sword energy in the entire world, and the entire gray palm collided with the sword mark. Due to this extra second, Feng Xingjian was slower by a beat, and the divine armor was already in his hands. That gray palm did not show any reluctance to leave either. In the blink of an eye, it once again retracted into the dark space-time tunnel, completely disappearing. It was as if the change in temperature and the 100 lis of barren land earlier were just an illusion. Looking at the surrounding sky, Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly, as if killing intent was gathering. Tyrant rushed over from the side and said, "What a terrifying power. Could that be the world annihilation heavenly lord?" Feng Xingjian said calmly, "On my way back, I felt that I was being surrounded by a faint sense of hostility. Therefore, when I was fighting against the fifth prince and the others earlier, I set up many layers of defenses and didn't go all out right from the start. The reason for this was to guard against it. I didn't expect that it would be the world annihilation heavenly lord following me. It seems that he isn't willing to let me off. However, with this test, he should know how powerful I am." After 7 days and 7 nights of cultivation, Feng Xingjian's soul had become even clearer and sharper. Even the 5 god-slaying swords showed signs of merging together. If it was not because of the 7 days and 7 nights of cultivation, allowing his sword arts to improve once again, he might have suffered a few more losses today. Feng Xingjian thought, with this clash between the Heaven's Volition Sword Intent and the Instant Sword, the world annihilation heavenly lord will probably be in a state of shock and doubt for a while and won't make a move casually again. Tyrant gasped and said, "It's really him? I've been in the Serene Shrine for so long, but I've never seen him make a move before. To think that you managed to exchange a blow with him?" He asked anxiously, "How was it? How was your trip to the Serene Shrine?" Chapter 563. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Feng Xingjian, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to let him know that going against me is the thing he'll regret the most in his entire life. Waves of intense fury and hatred burst forth, and there seemed to be gusts of eerie wind blowing in the valley. However, as the waves of fury burst forth, the fifth prince's martial will, which was like a phantom image, became increasingly thinner, as if it would disappear completely from this world at any moment. In fact, if one was below the divine level, their physical bodies would collapse, leaving behind only their martial will in the physical world. Logically speaking, they would not be able to exist for long. The will would require the support of the physical body in order to exist in the consciousness. This was unless one could cultivate the will to the divine level, turning it into a substance that could affect the physical world. Seeing that the fifth prince's fury was dissipating, Tian-yi said in a deep voice, "Focus and calm down. Don't let your thoughts run wild. If this goes on, you'll really die. Die." The fifth prince laughed out maniacally. "Without a physical body, what's the point of living? I might as well just die. Without a physical body, you can follow me and cultivate pure martial will," Tian-yi said calmly. "Even if you're unwilling to cultivate pure martial will, you can still wait until your will is strong enough to snatch a physical body and revive again. Snatch a physical body and revive again." The fifth prince was stunned for a moment before saying, "That's right. I want to revive. I want to find Feng Xinjian for revenge. I want him to beg me amidst his remorse and pain." Waves of hatred continued to burst forth from the depths of the fifth prince's consciousness, causing him to emit streams of faint black light. "That's right," Tian-yi said coldly. "That Feng Xinjian is truly an unprecedented opponent for me. If I don't get rid of this person, I won't be able to feel at ease." Right now, Tian-yi was not having a good time either. The light all over his body was as faint as a layer of paper. It was as if he would disappear completely with a gust of wind. The Heaven's Volition soared intense attack in that instant when he had a gap in his mind had dealt him a heavy blow. Thinking of the terrifying prowess of the Heaven's Volition sword intent, Tian-yi's phantom image seemed to tremble uncontrollably. "This heavy blow has taken away at least 3 months of my hard work." Tian-yi's eyes narrowed. "Feng Xinjian, I'll remember you." The fifth prince finally managed to calm down and said, "Let's recover for a while and then go find my sworn brother. He's the leader of the Great River Alliance, the Fist Emperor, and one of the 10 divine level experts in the Empire. With his help, we'll definitely be able to recover our strength and then look for Feng Xinjian for revenge." In the northern plains, who knew how many layers underground? The place was filled with the smell of sulfur and flames. Underground rivers of lava surged continuously, emitting bursts of intense heat. A figure wrapped in a gray cloak crawled out of a cave. The Serene Shrine's great elder, the Worm King, immediately went up and said, "Sir, you've returned? How is Feng Xinjian?" The World Annihilation Heavenly Lord's hoarse voice rang out from under the gray robes. "This kid really didn't go all out when he was fighting against you guys." His mind once again recalled Feng Xinjian's instant sword attack. It was a sword attack that came and went without a trace, and he felt an extreme fear in his heart. To think that even a divine-level expert like him had not been able to sense where that sword had come from. Feng Xinjian mustn't be underestimated. I'll ignore him for now. When I attain a breakthrough to Tier 2 of the divine level, and my will and physical body are interchangeable, I'll be able to sacrifice my physical body and perform black magic to completely refine this drought demon true body. By then, I'll be able to suppress him with a flip of my hand," the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord said calmly. "The crux isn't Feng Xinjian. It's the Black Devil and the others. To think that they want to kill the evil gods cloned together with the Empire's royal family. Do you think that the evil god's clone is so easy to kill? But it's good that they want to do this. If I can refine the drought demon true body before they finish, I'll be able to gain the greatest benefits from their operation this time around. Other people might not know, but I've been keeping an eye on the world's borders and world passageways until the holy sea of truth. The evil gods' descent won't be able to hide from them." Feng Xinjian had already grabbed onto the divine armor and returned to the surface. James, Zhou Xingwen, and the others immediately surrounded him. James was the first to ask, "Xinjian, the person who attacked at the last moment. It's the Serene Shrine's World Annihilation Heavenly Lord." Feng Xinjian paid no heed to everyone's astonishment and continued, "I need to think of a way to modify this armor. Get Wang Xiaoyan to come to the Sacred Land." At the next moment, he appeared in the Sacred Land with a flash. After absorbing the fifth prince's flesh and blood, this four-eyed heavenly winged beast armor kept on expanding and contracting, as if it was going through a mysterious transformation. Tyron also came over. After hearing Feng Xinjian's story of what had happened, he sighed and said, "To think that it's like this." As expected, he didn't manage to get the origin essence stone. The world annihilation heavenly lord has been keeping a close watch on him, and now that he has his guard up against you, it'll probably be even harder to get him. But you said that the royal family wants to join forces with the Mage Association to kill the evil god's clone? This is really sensational. Fang Xingjian felt the same way as well. What kind of existence was an evil god? It was a terrifying creature that existed in the heavens beyond countless space-time. It had the power to cross over the world's passageways and descend into Miracle World. It could even lend its power to all the mages in the world. The power and realm of an existence like this was something that ordinary people would find hard to imagine. To think that the people from the royal family and the Mage Association wanted to lay their hands on the evil god from the heavens beyond. They were really audacious. Kill the evil god's clone? Tyrant sighed and said, "There doesn't seem to be anyone in history who has done something like this. I have a bad feeling about this. The evil god is too powerful. Anyone who cultivates black magic should understand how powerful the evil god is. If it really descends with its consciousness, it'll be impossible for it to be killed. By then, there might not even be a need for the seventh onslaught. The entire human world might just be destroyed. It's too risky for them to do this." Fang Xingjian nodded. "However, it's impossible for us to stop them. The royal family and the Mage Association are too powerful. Moreover, I feel that the Holy Sea of Truth won't just sit by and do nothing. What we need to do now is to accumulate our power and fight for a place in the big events in the future." Fang Xingjian looked at the divine armor in his hand and could sense that there seemed to be a mysterious power being nurtured within it. Just then, the Wang clan's young miss, the last descendant of the mountainous Sea dynasty, Wang Xiaoyan, walked in. "I heard that you're looking for me. Take a look at this." Fang Xingjian exerted some force in his palm and brought the four-eyed heavenly winged beast's armor to Wang Xiaoyan. Wang Xiaoyan took a look, touched it a few times, and continued to scan it with her heaven's perception. The more she looked at it, the more astonished she became. "Interesting. This is an armor made from the four-eyed heavenly winged beast, right? Could it be the one made by the fifth prince?" Wang Xiaoyan exclaimed in astonishment. "The forging method of the armor is too lousy. It's just forcefully squeezed out. However, the method used to fix the four-eyed heavenly winged beast is very amazing. To think that he wiped out the memories of the four-eyed heavenly winged beast's will and fixed it within, using it as the energy source for the armor. This means that this divine remains equipment is alive. Amazing, really amazing. Moreover, after it absorbed the flesh and blood of an expert, there seems to be some special changes." Fang Xingjian said, "Then can you modify it a little? I have some use for it." Wang Xiaoyan smiled. "I'm not your match in terms of fighting, but you're not my match when it comes to forging divine weapons and armors. Leave it to me. In at most 2 weeks, I'll give you a level 32 divine remains equipment. But in terms of the materials, you can do whatever you want with it. Money isn't a problem." Chapter 564. 10 days later, in the Sacred Land, Tyrant and Fang Xingjian stood side by side. "Weapons and armors have always been very important to knight experts," Tyrant said. Past generations of knight experts, especially those divine-level experts who had left their names behind in history, would usually have their own armor and weapons. With powerful divine remains equipment and powerful people, they would naturally be successful in every endeavor. With this set of armor that the fifth prince sent over and the divine sword forged from that divine-level spinal bone, your battle prowess will at least double. But Tyrant sighed and said, "You don't have origin essence stones right now. Are you not planning to strive for brain regeneration before you reach the 10th level of the mystical prince?" Fang Xingjian said calmly, "Brain regeneration doesn't have a qualitative increase in my battle prowess. I might as well strive for it after I reach the 10th level of the mystical prince." Just as Tyrant and Fang Xingjian were conversing, Fang Xingjian's only disciple, Lilia, was also condensing sword light in the training ground before them. She pushed the long sword in her hand forward slowly, performing her sword moves bit by bit. She seemed to be moving at a snail's pace. If an expert were to see this, they would be able to sense the waves of destructive power on the tip of Lilia's longsword. Tyrande looked at Lilia, who was cultivating seriously, and said, "You want to nurture this disciple of yours? You even imparted the 5 god-slaying swords to her?" Fang Xingjia nodded. It was true that his subordinates were not strong enough. It was mainly because they had only recently cultivated to the 5th level of the mystical prince and did not have enough time to deplete the benefits of their talents. However, Lilia's respect for him was like that of a god. She was worth nurturing. Therefore, Fang Xingjia imparted the 5 god-slaying swords to her. It was a pity that although she had the support of the 5th level of the mystical prince, she was still a far cry from Fang Xingjia's talent in sword arts. Therefore, out of the 5 swords, Lilia only had a better comprehension of the all-conquering sword and thus specialized in cultivating this sword technique. She was slowly circulating her sword force, slashing apart the physical particles in the air bit by bit. It could be said that every inch of advancement was more difficult than slashing 1,000 people. Just then, Fang Qian walked over with Wang Xiaoyan. It turned out that she had been helping Wang Xiaoyan forge the 4-eyed heavenly winged armor for the past few days. As a great genius from Earth, Fang Qian's educational background was much higher than that of Fang Xingjian's. She was extremely familiar with all sorts of mathematical, physical, and chemical knowledge. This was also the only reason why she had been chosen by Li Shuanghua and sent to work with the first prince to learn the method to forge divine remains equipment. Over the past few days, Fang Qian had been interacting and working together with Wang Xiaoyan. Wang Xiaoyan was amazed at how Fang Qian had broken away from Miracle World's understanding. While Fang Qian kept on learning the methods Wang Xiaoyan had inherited from the Mountainous Sea dynasty to forge divine remains equipment. Both of them improved at a tremendous rate. Fang Qian said, "The divine armor is completed." "Oh." Fang Xingjian looked toward Fang Qian's head, a little surprised. He saw a miniature version of the 4-eyed heavenly winged beast, which was about the size of a child's palm, emerging from her thick long hair. It was looking around curiously. Wang Xiaoyan looked at this divine remains equipment, feeling a little emotional. "This should be the best piece of equipment I've forged in my entire life. With this experience, I'll be even more confident in helping you forge the next piece of equipment using the divine level spinal bone." Fang Xingjian looked at that little beast and said, a little surprised, "You guys have revived him?" "It can't be considered a revival. His original has long been forcefully wiped out by someone and turned into pure energy. If you want to make an analogy, this thing you're looking at right now is more similar to a biological artificial intelligence," Fang Qian said. "Earth has long had plans to create biological armors, but they have always been restricted by the materials and the artificial intelligence system. I didn't expect that it would be resolved here. This is equivalent to refining a divine-level ferocious beast into an armor. It possesses a certain level of intelligence and will continue to eat, evolve, adapt to the environment, and obtain increasingly stronger powers." With that, Fang Qian handed the little beast to Fang Xingjian. Fang Xingjian asked, "Then how does he use it?" The little beast lay quietly on Fang Xingjian's hand, as if it was not afraid of strangers at all. It just looked at Fang Xingjian quietly, not moving at all. Lilia also walked over. She looked at the little beast in Fang Xingjian's hand with stars on her face. "It's so cute." Fang Qian said, "Put your finger into his mouth and let him suck your blood. You're a demigod with 3 tiers of perfection. Not only will your blood contain information about your physical body, but it will also contain your powerful martial will. After he absorbs it, he'll remember you." Hearing that, Fang Xingjian placed his finger into the little beast's mouth. At the same time, he relaxed the toughness of his body. As the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces continued to weaken, his finger's toughness became about the same as that of an ordinary conferred knight's. The little beast bit open a wound on Fang Xingjian's finger and started to suck the fresh blood. It then licked Fang Xingjian's wound. Waves of strong medicinal potency took effect and healed Fang Xingjian's wound very quickly. As if sensing Fang Xingjian's doubts, Wang Xiaoyan explained, "This is the Mountainous Sea Dynasty's secret medicinal armor technique. We spent over 2 million gold and over 500 types of medicinal herbs to completely break the system in his body. As he continues to absorb ether particles, the blood in his body will turn into streams of medicinal liquid. This way, as long as you wear it in the future, the medicinal potency will continue to seep into your blood. On one hand, it can treat your injuries at any time, and on the other hand, it can continuously replenish your physical body. It can even subtly strengthen your physical body. This is money well spent." Fang Xingjian smiled. "Then how do I wear it?" Fang Qian said, "It should have already accepted the information about your physical body and your martial will. You could try to use heaven's perception to transmit information into his body." "Are my body?" At the next moment, the little beast's body went through an astonishing change. It multiplied and expanded rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a set of golden armor that encompassed Fang Xingjian entirely. With this, countless flesh spikes pierced out toward Fang Xingjian's body. Right now, Fang Xingjian was still wearing the Heavenly Abyss Annihilation armor. However, in that instant, the flesh spikes pierced through the Heavenly Abyss Annihilation armor. Then, like a monster consuming food, they ate up the Heavenly Abyss Annihilation armor in an instant. The entire golden armor trembled, sucking the Heavenly Abyss Annihilation armor into his body through the flesh spikes. The consciousness in the Heavenly Abyss Annihilation armor let out agonizing cries, as if it wanted to struggle. However, with a flash of golden light from the divine armor, it was completely annihilated. The divine armor then continued to pierce through Fang Xingjian's body. The toughness of the materials at level 32 was not something that Fang Xingjian's body could fend off. Back when Fang Xingjian had attacked the fifth prince, he had been unable to do anything to this set of armor. He could only use the infiltrating void sword to bypass this layer of defense and attack the fifth prince's body directly. As the flesh spikes pierced into his body, waves of strong medicinal potency gushed in, exchanging incessantly with the blood in Fang Xingjian's body. It could be said that it was constantly cleansing Fang Xingjian's muscles and marrow, continuously strengthening or healing Fang Xingjian's body. What was even more amazing was that a gush of golden will directly linked up with Fang Xingjian's will, filling up every inch of space around Fang Xingjian's body. In that instant, Fang Xingjian's entire body was encompassed by this streamlined golden armor. Although he had yet to reach the divine level, with this level 32 armor, Fang Xingjian could directly use the materialized will in the divine armor. He could even make use of the divine armor to turn his will into flesh and blood. It was just that the power of the divine armor's will was not as strong as that of a divine level expert like the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord. It could be said that after putting on this divine armor and making use of the divine armor's will, Fang Xingjian gained a portion of the ability to materialize his will and turn it into flesh and blood. His defense had also reached level 32. Even if the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord could attack through space, with Fang Xingjian's recovery abilities and the medicinal potency of the divine armor, he would be able to recover instantly. Moreover, with Fang Xingjian's sword arts, even if he chose not to activate the Heaven's Volition Sword intent now, Fang Xingjian had the confidence to have a good fight with the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord. Although he would not be able to win, he was not afraid of the World Annihilation Heavenly Lord at all. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian let out a long whistle. He could not wait to test out the prowess of the divine armor. Suddenly, he punched out toward Tyrant, who was next to him. Tyrant's gaze flickered, and he blocked Fang Xingjian's fist with his palm without hesitation. However, his countenance immediately changed, and he activated the gates of the netherworld to absorb Fang Xingjian's power. It was only then that he retreated a few steps, breaking out in cold sweat. His entire arm had become numb from the tremors. Originally, Fang Xingjian had attained 3 tiers of perfection and had a breakthrough to 10,000 specialty seeds. However, his physical strength was only slightly above that of Tyrant, who had engulfed 2 divine-level magic prince warriors. However, with the addition of the willpower and the divine armor, just his physical body alone would be able to crush Tyrant. In terms of willpower, his deathly sword intent, the Heaven's Volition sword intent in his mind, and the divine armors will far surpass that of all other conferred knights. He was truly invincible below the divine level. Tyrant's countenance was grim as he said, "What a great divine level armor. What are you planning to name it?" Chapter 565. What should it be called? Fang Xingjian did not mind this. He looked at Fang Qian and Wang Xiaoyan and said, "This is a divine remains equipment that the 2 of you work together to modify. You guys can name it." Wang Xiaoyan gave it some thought and said, "This divine armor can incessantly engulf all sorts of materials, and it can even evolve other divine remains equipment. Why don't we call it the World-Engulfing Battle God Armor?" World-Engulfing Battle God Armor? Not bad. Let's call it that then. Fang Xingjian looked at the golden armor on his body in satisfaction. With a single thought, the armor shrunk, turning into an invisible layer that stuck tightly onto Fang Xingjian's body. Fang Xingjian continued to ask, "Then how long will it take to forge a divine remains equipment using the divine level spinal bone?" Once he was able to arm this sword and armor, Fang Xingjian's abilities would naturally increase tremendously. Even if he were to go and get the Panwu heavenly raiment, he would not need to be afraid that someone would try to sneak up on him. After all, the world-engulfing battle god armor was modified by someone after someone refined it. As for the divine sword forged from the divine level spinal bone, we'll have to start from scratch. However, the preparations are almost done. After successfully forging the world-engulfing battle god armor, we've gained even more experience. Next, we'll only need to modify the blueprint, and we'll be able to forge a longsword for a divine remains equipment within 2 to 3 months. After Wang Xiaoyan said this, Fang Xingjian nodded. "All right, you guys can allocate the resources freely. There's no need to save money." After discussing the detailed design and planning of the divine remains equipment for a while longer, Wang Xiaoyan and Fang Qian left. However, not long after they left, Zhou Xingwen walked in again, took out a blueprint, and placed it before Fang Xingjian. "Xingjian, there's news of the Origin Essence Stone. It's not the church, the Terran Shrine, or the Empire's royal family's Origin Essence Stone. We've discovered an Origin Essence Stone that may not have been discovered yet." Oh, Fang Xingjian opened up the blueprint. There was a brilliant and extremely beautiful young lady drawn on it. However, what attracted Fang Xingjian's attention was not the young lady, but the gemstone necklace on her neck. Fang Xingjian looked at the necklace and said, "Someone used Origin Essence Stones to make a necklace? That's possible," Zhou Xingwen said in a deep voice. "After all, there are only a few Essence Stones in the entire world. Very few people know about them, and even fewer people recognize them. We only had this suspicion after confirming it many times." "That's right." Fang Xingjian nodded. "Who is this woman?" "Audrey Pope, the eldest daughter of the Pope family." Zhou Xingwen said, "The Northern Ice Region's Pop clan has been in the grain business for close to 100 years and is one of the great clans in the Northern Ice Region. Although they can't be considered to be at the top, they are still a top-notch influence. If we were to directly say that we want to buy it, it probably wouldn't be easy. There's no need to act rashly and alert the enemy." Fang Xingjian closed the blueprint. He was determined to get his hands on the Origin Essence Stone. If he wanted to be completely confident, then he would naturally have to make a move himself in secret and obtain this Origin Essence Stone. Thinking of this, he returned the blueprint to Zhou Xingwen and said, "Ignore him for now. Just keep monitoring him." Zhou Xingwen was stunned for a moment, as if he had not expected Fang Xingjian to do this. Shouldn't the Origin Essence Stone be something that was extremely important and needed to be obtained immediately? Fang Xingjian had suffered a setback from the Terran Shrine's ambush. He did not plan on letting his subordinates alert the enemy again for something as important as the Origin Essence Stone. He wanted to personally head to the northern ice region to take a look. Furthermore, now that the first prince, the escaped fifth prince, and the Terrene Shrine had their eyes on him, he was even more unwilling to lose the chance to get his hands on this origin essence stone. Therefore, after Zhou Xingwen left, Fang Xingjian looked for Tyrant and said, "Imitate my appearance for the next few days and help me hold down the fort in the great western city. Go out a few times and show your face." Oh, although Tyrant was a little surprised, he still nodded in agreement. Fang Xingjian then looked at Lilia, who was practicing her sword arts, and said, "Lilia, stop for a while." Seeing that Lilia's face was flushed and that there was steam rising from her body, Fang Xingjian said, "Pack up and come out with me." With Lilia around, she could act as a cover for him. Moreover, she could also nurture this disciple of hers. After all, almost all records of Lilia's identity had been erased, so it was very suitable for her to do something like this. Therefore, that afternoon, Fang Xingjian brought Lilia to the Bi's region's giant stone city. The two of them cut across the sky and landed over 10 kilometers away from Giant Stone City. The moment they landed, Fang Xingjian retracted his aura a little and changed his appearance. With his control over his physical body, it was too easy for him to change the corners of his eyes, the tip of his nose, and his cheekbones. It was just these minor changes that made him appear as if he had become a completely different person. Even if many students from the regional academy saw him, they would probably not be able to recognize him. Therefore, the two of them walked toward the Pop Clan's manor and arrived outside the outer wall of the backyard. Fang Xingjian looked at Lilia and said, "Wait here for a while. I'll go in and take a look." As he spoke, Fang Xingjian performed the infiltrating void and stepped into spatial gaps, disappearing completely. Seeing how freely Fang Xingjian was coming and going, Lilia's heart flashed with a hint of envy. It could be said that out of the 5 god-slaying swords, the one she was most envious of and liked the most was the infiltrating void. It could be said to be able to come and go as one pleased, possessing both offense and defense. It was a pity that she was unable to comprehend it no matter what. However, the all-conquering sword improved very quickly, leaving her feeling very helpless. On the other hand, Fang Xingjian darted into spatial gaps and casually moved around the entire Pop Clan's courtyard. With his current sword arts cultivation, he was like a fish in water when doing something like this. In an instant, he had already swept through the entire Pop Clan's courtyard and finally stopped in a garden at the back. The plants in the garden had been planted in various colors, and several hundred types of flowers were blooming in unison. It looked extremely beautiful. In this garden's pavilion, a young lady who could be said to be devastatingly beautiful was lying on a long bench. Her white muslin dress trailed on the ground casually, and her big eyes were looking at the flower in her hand. Her fair and delicate feet were swinging casually. It was the Pop Clan's eldest young miss, Audrey Pop. This eldest young miss, who was known as the #1 beauty in the Northern Ice region, was currently looking at the flower in her hand with a distressed expression, as if there was something troubling her. Under such circumstances, Fang Xingjian took a step forward and walked out from the spatial gaps, appearing before Audrey. Audrey blinked and asked, "Who are you?" Her eyes were filled with curiosity and doubt, as if she was not afraid at all due to the appearance of an unfamiliar man. Fang Xingjian said calmly, "I'm here to look for you." "Look for me? Could it be that you're thinking of kidnapping me?" Audrey smiled and said, "Aren't you afraid of being captured by the guards? In this world, there's no one who can capture me." Fang Xingjian's gaze swept past her neck and wrists, but he did not discover where the necklace was. He frowned and asked, "Where's the necklace you used to wear around your neck? Why has it disappeared?" Chapter 566. Hearing Fang Xingjian's words, Audrey seemed to find it even more interesting. She smiled and said, "You're here to look for the Star of Brilliance? Could it be that you're a bandit who wishes to rob me of my necklace?" Fang Xingjian said, "I'm not a bandit. If I have no other choice, I can even use money to buy it. Of course, I can also do some things for you in exchange for your necklace." "Star of Brilliance? Buy?" Audrey seemed to have heard something funny and laughed out loud. She only stopped after a long while, shook her head, looked at Fong Xingjian, and said, "Do you know how much money the Pop Clan has? They monopolize almost half of the food business in the entire BI's region. The wealth of the entire Pop Clan is enough to buy up the entire BI's region's capital." Audrey then looked at Fong Xingjian curiously and said, "With so much money, they can get anyone to do anything they want? It's really amazing that you were able to sneak into my backyard without a sound. But if you're able to help me, I wonder if you dare to assassinate the leader of the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, Xia?" The 8-directional Crimson Dragon was the #1 dark influence within the Empire's borders. They controlled the strongest assassins, killers, and mercenaries in the entire south of the continent. They could be said to be the strongest civilian military force, and had done all sorts of dark things. If the Great River Alliance, which the Fist Emperor was in charge of, was said to be a gang, then the 8-directional Crimson Dragon was a terrorist organization through and through. Their leader was Xia. No one knew where he came from or who his parents were. They only knew that when he had first entered the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, he had been called Xia. Right now, more people called him the Undying Xia, one of the 10 great divine level experts in the Empire. Hearing Audrey's words, Fong Xingjian fell silent for a moment before saying, "I don't know why you want to kill him. But if you're willing to hand the Star of Brilliance over to me, even if I can't kill Xia, I can at least guarantee that he won't be able to harm you." Audrey looked at the strange man in front of her. Her smooth feet swung back and forth. Her fair skin was as delicate as a baby's, and an amused smile appeared on her face. She looked at Fong Xingjian and said, "That's the Undying Xia, one of the 10 great divine level experts in the Empire. I heard that he has experienced several thousand situations where he would definitely die, but survived all of them. Back then, when he had yet to become a divine level expert, he assassinated a disciple of the Myriad Stars Palace. Thereafter, he was chased by the Myriad Stars Palace's astral ancestor and was on the run for 3 consecutive years. However, he still managed to survive. I don't know where your confidence comes from." However, at the next moment, Fong Xingjian suddenly disappeared before her eyes. She blinked and looked around. Fong Xingjian was nowhere to be seen. Even the conversation she had just had seemed like an illusion. What happened? Was that person just now a human or a ghost? Just as Audrey was thinking about this, an elderly man appeared before Audrey. The elderly man had a steady disposition, and the aura he exuded was like the great waves of the ocean. He had a disposition of a formidable character. However, at this moment, there was only fatigue in his eyes. When Audrey saw the elderly man, she temporarily put aside her doubts about Fong Xingjian's appearance and disappearance. She said directly, "Father, are you here to persuade me again?" "Audrey, my most beloved princess." Seeing Audrey's cold expression, the elderly man smiled bitterly and said, "If the situation allows it, I'm also willing to let you find your lover. It doesn't matter if he's poor, rich, weak, or useless. It's fine as long as you like him. However, reality doesn't allow me to do this. The 8-directional Crimson Dragon's representative will be coming to the banquet tonight. 8-directional Crimson Dragon. You really want to marry me to Xia?" Audrey stood up and said angrily, "That's Xia. Don't you know what kind of person he is? He has countless women, and it's said that he's even built an Elysian palace for himself, filled with women that he's plundered. The women there are never allowed to wear clothes, and they spend all day and night having fun with him. You want me to marry such a person?" Assassins and mercenaries were extremely tense during battles. When they were relaxed, it was easy for them to act recklessly and indulge in pleasures. Of course, there were also a small portion of mercenaries who would look for some simple things as hobbies. However, it was clear that the 8-directional Crimson Dragon Xia was not such a person. As the leader of an international terrorist organization, not only did he enjoy pleasures, but he was even more reckless than ordinary mercenaries. After finding out that Audrey was the top beauty in the Northern Ice region, he sent someone to send an invitation, wanting to marry Audrey. For the sake of this, the elderly man had gone to almost all the major influences in the Northern Ice region. However, When all the factions heard that they wanted to go against the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, they all shook their heads and rejected him. As for the Empire's government, they might support this under normal circumstances. However, what was the situation in the Empire right now? In the Xingwu region, the first prince was dealing with the 2 divine-level influences, the Myriad Stars Palace and the Full Moon Shrine. The royal family's king and the Abyss Lord were making preparations to join forces with the Mage Association to summon and kill the evil gods. How could they possibly complicate matters and treat the 8-directional Crimson Dragon as an enemy? The head of the Pop clan, Andolph, looked at Audrey with a pitiful expression and said, "There's nothing I can do either. I'm really at my wit's end. For the past 3 months, the 8-directional Crimson Dragon has only said a few words, and we've lost another 30% of our business. If this were to go on, even without Xia taking action, our clan will collapse. Father has let you down, but I'm really at my wit's end. If you don't marry Xia, it probably won't be long before our entire Pop clan goes into a complete decline." When Audrey saw the state her father was in, a hint of pity flashed in her heart. She sat back down very quickly and did not say a word. She merely looked out at the flower fields, and the sorrow in her eyes grew even stronger. When her father, Andolph, saw the state his daughter was in, his heart also ached greatly. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only continue to say, "This matter was originally a secret, but it seems like they can't wait any longer. Tonight, they'll send someone over to announce your engagement at the banquet. By then, the entire Northern Ice region will know about this, and they'll even send people to take care of you day and night. Are they trying to force me to my death?" Seeing how Audrey looked as if she was dead, Andolph sighed and retreated slowly. As a man, how could he not want to fight to the death to protect his daughter? However, as a clan head, he really did not have the courage to sacrifice his clan to fight against the 8-directional Crimson Dragon. After Andolph left, Feng Xingjian appeared once again. However, Audrey's gaze did not change at all. She merely stared at the flower fields as if she was dead. However, after sensing Feng Xingjian's appearance, she could not help but say, "How is it? Do you know what's going on? Do you still dare to work for me?" Feng Xingjian said, "So that's how it is. Is the 8-directional Crimson Dragon trying to force you into a marriage? I understand now. Then I'll help you fend off the 8-directional Crimson Dragon and guarantee that Xia will never be able to force you into a marriage. Hand over the Star of Brilliance to me." Audrey looked at Feng Xingjian in surprise, as if she had not expected him to say something like this. After a long while, she broke out into a smile that was like 100 flowers blooming. Although Feng Xingjian's words seemed childish and laughable to her, at the very least, he was the only person who had expressed that he was willing to help her during this period of time. "Don't force yourself. Leave quickly. Otherwise, if the guards discover you, you won't be able to leave. As for the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, I can only blame my bad luck." Chapter 567. Looking at Audrey's expression, Feng Xingjian did not say anything more. It was because he knew that facts spoke louder than words. We'll know tonight whether or not I'll be able to fend off the 8-directional Crimson Dragon. You just have to prepare the Star of Brilliance. Audrey smiled and shook her head. "You want the Star of Brilliance that much? Then I'll give it to you. In any case, I have no use for it anymore. If you need it, just take it." With that, she stood up and headed for her bedroom. Feng Xingjian looked at Audrey in astonishment, as if he had not expected this woman to be so carefree. Along the way, Feng Xingjian moved through the spatial gaps, following Audrey through many pavilions and buildings, and then arrived at Audrey's dressing room. The dressing room was over 100 square meters in size, and it was filled with all sorts of clothes, jewelry, shoes, and many other things. It showed how wealthy the Pop clan was. Audrey walked up to the jewelry cabinet, opened the drawer, and took out a gemstone necklace from the corner. She said to the air, "Weird guy, are you still there?" Feng Xingjian appeared from the spatial gaps in a flash and looked at the Star of Brilliance in Audrey's hand. One of the red gemstones was what he suspected to be an origin essence stone. Audrey handed the Star of Brilliance to Feng Xingjian and said, "Take it. This is what you wanted, right? Take it and leave. The 8-directional Crimson Dragon isn't that easy to deal with. Don't lose your life in a moment of rashness." Feng Xingjian was stunned for a moment, as if he had not expected that he would be able to get his hands on the Star of Brilliance so easily. He took a look at Audrey's beautiful face, took the Star of Brilliance, and started studying it. Scanning it with waves of heaven's perception, Feng Xingjian tried to channel his deathly sword intents into it. At the start, there was nothing much. However, as more and more deathly sword intents were channeled in, Feng Xingjian's sharp senses allowed him to discover something very quickly. The deathly sword intents that were channeled into the Origin Essence Stone were not depleted at all. They would even absorb an indescribable energy to replenish the depleted sword intents. Consciousness exists within. Not only can it be preserved for a very, very long time, but can also be constantly nurtured. However, such minute differences require an extremely high level of cultivation and an extremely sensitive mind to notice. Looking at the Origin Essence Stone in his hand, Feng Xingjian lifted his head to look at Audrey. His emotions were a little complicated. He did not expect her to give the stone to him so easily. Even though the other party didn't know that this was a priceless origin stone, just the gemstone necklace itself was worth tens of thousands of gold coins. Seeing the strange look in Feng Xingjian's eyes, Audrey playfully smiled and said, "What do you think? Could it be that you want something else? That won't do. If my father finds out, he will definitely scold me to death. A drop of water should be returned with a spring of water." Feng Xingjian said calmly, "Don't worry. I'm a person who distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. If there's a grudge, there's an eye for an eye. Since you've given me the Star of Brilliance, I naturally won't let you do it for nothing. I'll help you take on the 8-directional Crimson Dragon." Audrey looked at Feng Xingjian, feeling both amused and infuriated. Why don't you listen to what others say? She still wanted to say something, but the strange man before her had already disappeared completely. She let out a bitter laugh, but did not take it to heart. In her opinion, the other party was merely putting up a front and saying some pleasantries. As the top beauty in the Northern Ice region, she had seen too many men like this. "I was wondering if you'd be able to help me escape. In the end, you left just like that." Feng Xingjian retreated and once again appeared next to Lilia. Lilia asked, "How is it, Master?" Feng Xingjian nodded. "I got it." Feng Xingjian opened up his hand, and the Star of Brilliance laid on top of it. Lilia said excitedly, "It's that simple? Master, you're really amazing. Are we going back now?" As she said the latter half of her words, she seemed a little disappointed. It was as if she had not expected that the two of them would have to return not long after coming out. Feng Xingjian shook his head. "There's no hurry. Let's stay here for tonight. I'll go back tomorrow to cultivate the 10th level of the Mystical Prince." Therefore, for the next few hours, Feng Xingjian brought Lilia along to find an empty house to sit down and cultivate. It was only when the sky turned dark that Feng Xingjian pulled Lilia along and performed the infiltrating void sword technique. Feng Xingjian immediately felt that it was very difficult to perform the infiltrating void sword technique while bringing along another person. He calculated in his heart that even with his cultivation, he would probably be unable to perform the infiltrating void sword technique while bringing along 3 or 4 people at most. The two of them passed through many layers of spatial gaps, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived at an uninhabited courtyard in the Pop clan's territory. Then with a flash, they once again appeared in the physical world. Right now, the Pop clan's manor was brightly lit, and there was a hubbub of voices in the distance. There were endless sounds of wine glasses clinking against each other, and the laughter of men and women could be heard. It was clear that some kind of banquet was being held. "Let's go and take a look." Feng Xingjian's gaze flickered slightly, and he headed for the lawn where the banquet was being held. The two of them walked slowly to a lawn and saw that there were many guests passing by. Most of them were dressed in formal attire. The men's clothes were well ironed, while the women's jewelry was expensive. It was clear that they were all reputable characters in the Northern Ice region. Waiters walked on the lawn with cocktails and snacks in their hands. Groups of men stood together in groups of 3 to 5, occasionally bursting into laughter. However, Feng Xingjian and Lilia were not wearing formal attire. They were wearing ordinary training clothes, appearing a little out of place in the banquet. Lilia instinctively hated such gatherings. She was the daughter of Cursed City Lord, but when she was in Cursed, she had never attended such banquets. It was because she felt that it was a waste of time and boring. She could not help but ask Feng Xingjian, "Master, how long are we going to stay here for?" Feng Xingjian walked to a corner with her, closed his eyes, and quietly cultivated his ether organs. Hearing this, he replied, "We're waiting for the people from the 8-directional Crimson Dragon to come." Just as Lilia was feeling a little impatient, a man's surprised voice rang out. "Lilia, why are you here?" Lilia lifted her head and frowned. "Kite." The young man who walked over was dressed in a well-ironed suit. He had oily hair, and the treasured sword hanging at his waist was clearly of extraordinary value. He exuded an air of nobility. It was Lilia's classmate from the great western city's night academy, Kite, who had once courted her. "Lilia, where on earth have you been during this period of time?" Kite looked at Lilia in pleasant surprise, then looked at Feng Xingjian warily. However, Feng Xingjian had concealed his aura and adjusted his appearance slightly, so Kite was unable to recognize him. Looking at Kite's appearance, Lilia frowned and said, "Why have you become like this? You have the air of a woman. Didn't you cultivate your martial arts properly?" Kite was stunned for a moment, and he appeared a little embarrassed. A man with a feminine appearance stood next to Kite, seeming to be his friend. Hearing this, he said in amusement, "Young lady, you look pretty, but you're quite fierce when you speak." Chapter 568. Oliver looked at Kite and asked, "Is she the Lilia that you've been talking about? Aren't you going to introduce her?" It was only then that Kite reacted. Thinking of his achievements in the Northern Ice region, he lifted his head, and a hint of confidence flashed in his eyes. He looked at Lilia and said, "This is my cousin, Oliver. I've come to the Northern Ice region with him to do business. Our clan has always had transactions in the Northern Ice region, and Cousin Oliver is the person in charge here. Right now, I'm his assistant. The Pop clan also has a lot of working relationships with us. That's why we're here at tonight's banquet." Thinking of how he had spent over 10,000 gold with a single wave of his brush, how he had gotten several tens of knights to work for him with a single order, and how with the accumulation of countless resources, his strength had also increased at a rapid rate, Kite unknowingly straightened his back. He threw a glance at Feng Xingjian and felt that the other party looked very ordinary. The clothes he was wearing were also very simple, and he could not sense any energy waves from him at all. Most of the wariness in Kite's heart disappeared, and he asked curiously, "Lilia, how did you come to the Pop clan? Is this Misty your friend?" Lilia threw a glance at Feng Xingjian and realized that Feng Xingjian's eyes were still tightly shut, as if he was still cultivating. Therefore, she said, "He's my friend. I just came over to take a look at tonight's banquet." Kite smiled at Feng Xingjian perfunctorily. He could not be bothered to ask for his identity and just said to Lilia, "Lilia, come with me. I'll introduce you to a few people. No matter what you do in the future, it'll definitely be of great help to you." At this moment, Kite's heart was filled with the urge to flaunt his connections in the Northern Ice region to Lilia. It had not been easy for him to meet Lilia, so he must make her stay. He still had a lot of things he wanted to tell Lilia. Why had she dropped out of school? Where had she gone? And why had he not seen her in the great western city ever since? Hearing this, Lilia turned to look at Feng Xingjian. Although Feng Xingjian still did not respond, Lilia still said, "Thank you, but there's no need." Kite continued to speak with great enthusiasm. "Lilia, there's no need to feel embarrassed. Although I don't know what you're doing now, the few people I'm introducing you to are all important people. As long as you get to know them well, you'll be able to benefit greatly no matter which field you're in." Oliver, who was at the side, frowned slightly when he saw Lilia glancing at Feng Xingjian from time to time. He knew that the relationship between Lilia and Feng Xingjian was was probably not simple. He patted Kate on the shoulder and said, "Forget it. If she doesn't want to go, then go. I told Bruce about you the day before yesterday. He wants to see you today. Come with me." Initially, Kite was still a little reluctant to part with her. However, when he heard the words Bruce, his expression immediately changed. He nodded at Lilia and said, "Then Lilia, I'll go meet an important person first. You must wait for me. I'll come and look for you later." With that, he was dragged away by Oliver. Not long after they left, Oliver said to Kite, "Silly kid, your goddess seems to have a special relationship with that guy." "What? That's impossible. That guy looks so mediocre. They're probably just ordinary friends." Oliver grinned and said, "Haven't you noticed? Every time you ask Lilia a question, Lilia will look at that guy. It's as if he's her pillar of support. Moreover, it's not only outstanding guys who are attractive. Some guys don't have much ability, but they just happen to know how to coax girls. They're also very popular." Kite frowned slightly, as if he wanted to go back immediately. Oliver shook his head and said helplessly, "Why are you being so rash? Are you thinking of beating that guy up? Or are you going to question Lilia? How childish. Before dealing with others, you should first find out how good they are." Kite asked puzzledly how. Oliver looked at Kite with a relaxed expression, as if he was playing a game. To him, taking liberties with his subordinates was also a form of entertainment. He said, "All the guests who are here today have a name list. Later on, I'll get someone to look at the name of the guy who came with Lilia. We'll basically know who he is. These are just small matters. Which place doesn't have women? They're just two minor characters. We can deal with them anytime. The key is Bruce. Let me tell you, I'm going to introduce you to Bruce today. Don't mess it up. I mentioned your name to him a few times before he was willing to meet you. There's no need for me to say more about how amazing Bruce is. Later on, you must perform well." Kite nodded. Thinking of how he was about to meet Bruce, his gaze became a little nervous. Bruce was the eldest young master of the Henry clan, a top-notch clan in the Northern Ice region. 2 generations of the clan had been the Northern Ice region's governor. After 100 years, they could be said to have deep roots in the entire Northern Ice region and possessed extraordinary influence. After the 2 governors' terms ended, the Henry clan moved to the Northern Ice region and instantly became the #1 clan in the Northern Ice region. It could be said that in the Northern Ice region, without the care of the Henry clan, it would be like living in 2 different worlds. The current eldest young master of the Henry clan, Bruce, was already a level 29 conferred knight at a young age. Moreover, under his management, the Henry clan had already taken up over 70% of the Northern Ice region's ores market. The Henry clan was undoubtedly the overlord, and even the current governor had summoned him many times. He could be said to be well-versed in both the pen and the sword. Although he had yet to take full control of the Henry clan, everyone already saw him as the next clan head of the Henry clan. Kite followed his cousin, Oliver, to a corner of the lawn and saw many young masters and young ladies, each of them exuding an air of nobility. All of them were surrounding a young man. This young man was dressed in a dark golden suit, holding a scepter in one hand and wearing a ring with an emerald on his index finger. He exuded a disposition that had been passed down in aristocratic clans for several decades or even 100 years. He was elegant, mysterious, and had a low-profile nobility. It was the Henry clan's eldest young master, Bruce. Hearing Kite's and Oliver's voices, Bruce laughed out loud. "Look who's here. My brother, Oliver." With just a casual sentence, Bruce gave off the feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze. He gave Oliver a light hug, looked at Kite, and said, "This must be the Kite that you've always mentioned to me? I've heard about the matter at the Blackstone mine. You've done well." Kite nodded, feeling overwhelmed by the favor, and said, "You're praising me too much. Compared to your great investment in the canal, what I've done is nothing much. Don't be nervous. You're Oliver's brother, so you're one of us." Bruce patted Kite's shoulder warmly. With just a few words, he had closed the distance between the two of them. He was really a born leader. Chapter 569. Kite got familiar with Bruce very quickly. He felt that the other party had an elegant demeanor and was knowledgeable. No matter what they talked about, he would always be able to hit the nail on the head. Moreover, he did not put on any airs. He was simply. There's a hint of the aura of a ruler? Kite thought to himself. If Bruce had been born in the royal family, his achievements might not be any worse than the first prince's. Just as the few of them were chatting, a waiter suddenly walked up to Oliver and whispered a few words into his ear. Oliver chuckled and looked at Kite. This girlfriend of yours is really special. Oh, Kite's girlfriend is here as well? Bruce asked. Aren't you going to bring her to meet us? Oliver shook his head and recounted what had happened earlier. Then he asked, guess who that guy is? Who is it? Oliver smiled and said with a hint of disdain in his eyes, their names aren't on the name list. The two of them snuck in. What? Kite asked in surprise. Oliver then smiled again, and there was a hint of arrogance in his eyes. I've already gotten someone to inform the guards. Just wait and watch the show. Later on, just make sure to stand out and play the role of a hero saving the damsel in distress. As for that guy, it's just a matter of saying the word to deal with him. Kite instantly understood what was going on. Oliver wanted him to go over and help Lilia resolve the awkward situation when she was being chased away. Bruce also looked in Feng Xinjian's direction with great interest. It was rare to see such a farce at the Pop Clan's banquet. As for the people who had snuck in, they were just people who were greedy for glory and wanted to find someone powerful to cling to. Both Oliver and Bruce had seen a lot of people like this. Sometimes, it would also be fun to toy around with people like this. Two guards had appeared before Feng Xinjian and Lilia. They nodded and said politely, May I ask if the two of you can show us your invitations? Lilia frowned slightly and said, I threw it away the moment I came in. What do you guys want? The two guards looked at each other, and their expressions changed slightly. They looked at Feng Xinjian and Lilia with a hint of contempt and disdain. From her point of view, a little beauty like Lilia would definitely sneak into the banquet just to find a man with power and influence. I'm sorry, this is a private party. We suspect that the two of you have not been invited. Please come with us. A look of surprise flashed across Lilia's face. She turned to look at Feng Xinjian, but did not receive any instructions. The two guards were getting impatient and said, Please come with us. The situation here had obviously attracted the attention of many people in the hall. At this moment, the gazes that were looking at Feng Xinjian and Lilia were all different. Some were mocking, some were amused, some were curious, and some were judging. Among a group of aristocratic ladies in the distance, an aristocratic lady by the name of Vicky said, to think that someone managed to sneak into the Pop Clan's banquet. The security measures are a little lacking. The aristocratic lady next to her said, Hee, I've long felt that there's something strange about them. To think that they would dress up like this to attend the banquet. So it turns out that they've snuck in. Another aristocratic lady said, That lady looks quite pretty. She must be here to hook up with a man, right? Hearing everyone's mockery, hints of fury flashed on Lilia's face. During this period of time, under Feng Xinjian's guidance, she had already reached the level of a level 25 conferred knight and had started to condense specialty seeds. She was no small matter, and right now, she really wanted to make a move. However, with her flushed face, others would think that she was ashamed and embarrassed. Kite frowned, unable to take it anymore, and was about to walk out. Oliver grabbed his shoulder and grinned, saying, What's the hurry? The show has only just begun. Make your move when they're being escorted out. Just say that she's the female companion you brought along. This lady will definitely be extremely grateful to you. By then, you might even be able to get to the home plate tonight. Just then, Feng Xinjian finally opened his eyes slightly and threw a glance at the two guards. With just a simple glance, the two guards' faces turned pale. It was as if they had fallen into the icy plains of the North Pole, unable to move at all. Scram! The two guards immediately retreated a few steps back. Their legs were trembling, and it was as if they were about to escape. However, just as the two of them were about to escape, a lady dressed in white walked over quickly. The lady had beautiful hair that cascaded down like a waterfall, an exquisite face, and fair and tender skin. She looked just like a fairy from the legends. The moment she appeared, Almost everyone's gazes were attracted to her, and they gasped in admiration at how amazing the heavens' creation was. The person who had just arrived was the eldest miss of the Pop clan, Audrey Pop, who was known as the top beauty in the Northern Ice region. She walked up to Fong Xinjian and shook her head helplessly. "You guys can leave. The two of them are my friends." The two guards threw a terrified glance at Fong Xinjian. Hearing Audrey's words, they immediately left as if they had been pardoned from a great crime. Audrey's act of getting them out of the predicament shocked everyone. Kite and Oliver were also extremely astonished. However, when they saw Audrey holding on to Fong Xinjian's hand and leaving, their mouths were agape, unable to say a word. Bruce abruptly crushed the wine glass in his hand, and there seemed to be killing intent gathering in his eyes. Oliver immediately recalled that Bruce and Audrey were considered to be the golden couple of the Northern Ice region's new generation. It was said that Bruce had always been interested in Audrey, and by the looks of it, it was far from just being interested. Audrey pulled Fong Xinjian and Lilia along and ran to a small garden. She could not help but ask, "Why are you here again? Didn't I give you the item? Are you really not afraid of death?" She then shook her head. "Forget it. How about this? You're not bad at sneaking around, right? If you're really not afraid of death, do you dare to bring me away?" Lilia, who was standing at the side, looked at Audrey warily. Audrey's tight and delicate beauty made her feel extremely threatened. Especially after hearing Audrey's words, the wariness in Lilia's eyes grew even stronger. She looked at Audrey and asked, "Master, who is he?" Fong Xinjian said calmly, "The person who gave me the stone. The 8-directional crimson dragon has set its eyes on her. I'm going to protect her." Hearing this, the wariness in Lilia's expression did not disappear. Instead, it became even more intense. Audrey said helplessly, "What's there to protect? If you want to repay my kindness, you can just bring me away. I'll go pack up tonight. Come to my room to look for me at 4 in the morning. It's a deal." Seeing how eager Audrey was, Fong Xinjian frowned slightly. Just then, Bruce, Kite, and Oliver walked over. Hearing Audrey's words, the killing intent in Bruce's eyes grew even stronger. He looked at Fong Xinjian with jealousy and hatred. He had known Audrey since they were young and felt that they were a match made in heaven. They were also the golden couple that was most compatible in the Northern Ice region. He had always thought that Audrey was also interested in him and had already taken Audrey as his woman, his exclusive property. How could he allow others to lay their hands on her? Fong Xinjian's actions were like pulling out his reverse scale. Chapter 570. Bruce walked over slowly and suddenly said in a clear voice, "Audrey, aren't you going to introduce this friend to me?" Audrey lifted her head and looked over. When she saw Bruce and the other two, she frowned slightly. "They have nothing to do with you. Bruce, it's not up to you to interfere in my affairs." Hearing this, Bruce's fury intensified. Waves of majestic and heavy aura, which was like that of an ancient divine mountain, rose from Bruce's body. Layers of his joints trembled, releasing sounds that were like steel bars clashing against each other. Waves of heavy power seethed out from the surface of his body, and even the air seemed to have been compressed into something material. He clenched his palm gently, and there seemed to be sounds of air exploding coming from his palm. Each and every move he made was like that of a ghost or god. Kite, who was at the side, was horrified when he sensed this scene. The aura that Bruce was displaying right now was like a completely different person from when he was chatting and joking earlier. Bruce smiled coldly and did not reply to Audrey. Instead, he looked at Fong Xinjian and said with an indifferent tone, standing high and mighty like a god, "I'm Bruce Henry. I don't care who you are, and I don't care why you dare to get close to Audrey. I'll give you 1 minute. Scram from the banquet within 1 minute, and I can take it as I've never seen you tonight." Although Kite was terrified of Bruce's aura, he thought of Lilia and still mustered up his courage to say, "Lilia, what are you still standing there for? Come over quickly." Lilia threw a disdainful glance at the three of them, as if she could not be bothered to say anything. Kite panicked a little, worried that Lilia would also be targeted by Bruce. He was about to go out and grab Lilia back. However, he had only taken one step when Oliver quickly pressed down on his shoulder. A series of information currents gushed into Kite's mind, and Oliver said anxiously, "What are you messing around for? Although Bruce was chatting and joking with you earlier, now that you've offended him, you might not even be able to leave the city tonight." Kite's heart skipped a beat, but he stopped in his tracks, not daring to move anymore. Bruce crossed his arms before his chest, looked coldly at Feng Xingjian, and said, 30 seconds left. Feng Xingjian did not even look at Bruce. He had only come today to help Audrey deal with the 8-directional Crimson Dragon. As for the other people at the banquet, he had never paid any attention to them. He said indifferently, "Get lost." There was a cold glint in Bruce's eyes, as if he was scheming something. "Little brat, you asked for it." Feng Xingjian was 19 years old at the moment, and in Bruce's eyes, he was indeed a little brat. Just then, Audrey shouted angrily, "Enough, Bruce. If you keep messing around, I won't talk to you for the rest of my life." Audrey was still hoping that Feng Xingjian would take her away. How could she tolerate Bruce's interference? Upon hearing this, Bruce's face darkened. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He felt as if the tip of his heart had been ruthlessly stabbed by someone. He pointed at Feng Xingjian and said, "Hello, you are very good." As he said these words, it was as if someone had stomped on his face fiercely a few times. He looked at Feng Xingjian with a gaze like that of a man-eating beast. However, he really liked Audrey too much. In the end, he took a long look at Audrey and Feng Xingjian before turning to leave. However, he had just turned when Feng Xingjian's voice rang out. "Did I say you can leave?" Bruce was so angry that he laughed. He turned to look at Feng Xingjian as if he was looking at an idiot. Oliver could not help but frown and say, "Kid, don't be so ungrateful. Before you do anything, it's best to think clearly about who your opponent is." Long-winded. As Feng Xingjian spoke, he tapped out a finger across space. Oliver only felt an intense pain on his face, as if someone had smashed him with a huge metal hammer. He was sent flying, spinning. His face was deformed, distorted, and covered in blood. He was completely disfigured. He touched his face with great difficulty, and when he saw the blood on his hand, he cried out crazily, "I'm going to kill him! I'm going to kill him! How dare you!" Bruce snorted furiously, took a step forward, and arrived before Feng Xingjian. His entire body trembled, and he charged toward Feng Xingjian like a human-shaped tank. Wherever he passed by, the violent force crushed the flower beds under his feet, and it was as if the air before him had been compressed into a material state. Audrey, who was at the side, cried out in surprise, "All of you stop." However, how could Bruce possibly stop now? The only thing left in his eyes was Feng Xingjian. He had to kill him, crush him, and let him know what kind of existence he had offended. However, just as he was about to land a punch on Feng Xingjian's face, Feng Xingjian kicked out casually. There was no shadow of the kick, nor any movement, but Bruce was sent flying like a cannonball. He crashed into Oliver, who was on the ground. The two of them broke through a wall and crashed onto the lawn of the banquet hall with a loud boom. Audrey could not help but cover her eyes and moan, "Oh my God, what on earth are you doing?" She knew the Henry clan's abilities too well, and knew that Feng Xingjian had stirred up a hornet's nest. Kite looked at this scene with his eyes and mouth agape. He only reacted after a few breaths' time and shook his head toward Feng Xingjian and Lilia. "You guys are on your own." After saying that, he ran toward Bruce and Oliver. It was as if he could already imagine the fury of Bruce and the Henry clan. A storm was about to arrive. Just as he escaped from the small garden in a sorry state, countless people's gazes turned toward him. Clearly, the situation in the small garden had attracted the attention of everyone at the banquet. On the ground, Bruce's muscles were twitching all over, and his face was covered in dirt. He was unable to get up even after a long time. Oliver was in an even worse state. His head was covered in blood, and even his consciousness was in a state of chaos. Kite quickly helped the two of them up and moved them to the chairs at the side. Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment, and even more people immediately surrounded them, showing concern for the injured Bruce. However, the two of them were conferred knights after all, and their physical recovery abilities were astonishing. It did not take long for them to slowly recover. A short moment later, Audrey, Fang Xingjian, and Lilia walked out, causing everyone to be even more astonished, puzzled, and suspicious. A few aristocratic ladies in the distance chuckled. One of them, Madame Vicky, was a famous gossiper in the circle. When she saw this scene, she covered her mouth and said, "There's going to be a good show to watch." Bruce and Audrey have known each other since young, and Bruce has always wanted to marry Audrey. This lad has offended Bruce badly. The aristocratic lady, next to Madame Vicky, said, "To think that he would dare to fight in the banquet. Bruce must be infuriated. But for this lad to be able to beat up Bruce, he's quite strong." Vicky chuckled and said, "What's the use of having a little bit of power? Moreover, Bruce's martial arts talent is only average to begin with. However, ever since the Henry clan's old ancestor stepped down from the position of governor, he has been in seclusion for 20 years. God knows what level he has reached. Youngsters these days are too arrogant. Just because they have a little bit of power, they don't know how high the heavens are. It's only right for them to suffer a little." Another aristocratic lady smiled coldly and said, "I wonder how Bruce will deal with him. Ha! A rich young mistress has taken a liking to a commoner. Does he really think that the real world is a love story?" Chapter 571. Level 29 was also divided into many different levels. There were people like the Fifth Prince and Supreme Chief, who were demigods with tiers 2, 3, and 4. There were ordinary peak level 29 governors and regional chiefs. There were people like deputy governors of the 2nd and 3rd grades, Sword Saint Sasa, and the Tower Lord of the Sword Tower, Hops. There were also people like Hildebrand, who was one of the top 3 students. There were also the weakest students who had just become level 29 conferred knights, such as Bruce. Level 29 brought with it endless potential, but the battle prowess was worlds apart. Fang Xingjian had long since understood the logic behind this. The experts, like the first prince in the past, could single-handedly change the country's situation. The weakest was Hildebrand, who was only one of the top 3 students in the regional academy. He only had some prestige and fame and was called a genius. Although Bruce had become a level 29 expert, he was one of the weakest. The abilities that Fang Xingjian had displayed earlier could only crush him. If it were any other time, Fang Xingjian's earlier performance would be taken seriously. However, when the person he had beaten up was Bruce, everyone had already started to mourn for him. Lying on the deck chair, Bruce listened to the words of concern and concern. His expression became more and more unsightly. He seemed to be suppressing his anger, but at the same time, he was like a volcano that was about to erupt, ready to erupt with a world-shaking disaster at any time. To him, everyone's gazes seemed to be filled with ridicule. All the words of concern were mocking him. Immediately, go to the clan and get Master Martha here." He grabbed one of his men and said, "Tell Martha that I want that man dead. I don't care who he is, who he works for, or what backing he has. He must die before the end of tonight's banquet." Bruce said softly. His words, which were filled with killing intent, were like the cold winds from the North Pole, causing Kite to shiver uncontrollably. He looked at Fang Xingjian with a gaze filled with pity. Simultaneously, he heaved a sigh of relief. Thankfully, Bruce had not vented his anger on Lilia. Oliver, who was standing at the side, had blood all over his head. He glared at Fang Xingjian with eyes filled with hatred. Yes, he must die. No one has ever dared to treat me like this. I'm going to break all his limbs and feed him to the dogs. At the same time, he looked at Audrey with disdain. He couldn't figure out how this woman could be so stupid. It was true that the Pop clan was very powerful, but when compared to the Henry clan, which had been rooted in the Northern Ice region for over 100 years, they were nothing. The Henry clan had taken root in the Northern Ice region for over 100 years and had been managed by 2 generations of the governor. There were countless former officials in the government of the Northern Ice region. Just the thought of the influence that the Henry clan held was terrifying to Oliver. Even the current governor, who was the top person in the northern ice region, who was also the first prince's man, had to appease the Henry clan. What a foolish woman. The Pop family has been ruined by her. Oliver looked at Fong Xingjian, his heart filled with the desire for revenge. Kid, you have no idea what kind of monster you are facing. Simultaneously, he also turned his gaze toward a corner of the banquet, where the Pop clan's clan head, Andolph, was sitting. Bruce also looked toward Andolph, as if asking him why he had not done anything. Most people turned their gazes toward Andolph, as if wanting to see what the host of the banquet would do. However, Andolph appeared composed. He was just looking at Fong Xingjian with a slightly displeased gaze. However, when he looked at Audrey, a hint of pity flashed in his eyes. So I forget it. I'll just let Audrey fool around for once. As for the Henry clan, they are indeed powerful. However, if our clan really relies on the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, then the Henry clan will be nothing much. Andolph's gaze turned toward Fong Xingjian as he smiled coldly inwardly. It's this young man. I hope that Audrey won't make any mistakes. He detested young people like Fong Xingjian. In his opinion, people like him were young and full of vigor. They tended to not know the immensity of the heavens and the earth, thinking that they had great talent and that the entire world revolved around them. Many unnecessary conflicts in this world were caused by young people like him. Although Fong Xingjian had casually defeated Bruce and Oliver and displayed great abilities, one's abilities still depended on who they were up against. The powers that Fong Xingjian had displayed earlier were only at the level of the top 5 in the regional academy. He was quite powerful, but that was all. Andolph thought to himself, if it was 1 year ago, I might have given you a chance to woo Audrey. However, compared to the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, you're nothing. When everyone saw Andolph's behavior, they all felt puzzled. Could it be that this kid was someone important? Even Andolph had reservations. Andolph, Pop Clan. I'll remember this. You guys are really good. Hatred seethed in Bruce's heart. Humph. Wait for Martha to come. Once she comes, as expected of a level 29 conferred knight. Right now, most of the injuries on Bruce's body had already recovered. With a light shake, he shook off the dust on his body. However, the hatred in his heart grew increasingly intense. However, from the earlier exchange, he knew that he was not a match for Fong Xingjian. Moreover, the Pop clan would not help him either. Therefore, he could only hold it in and wait for the experts from his clan to arrive. Audrey stood next to Fong Xingjian, clutching her head as if she had a headache. She kept on saying, "Why are you so rash? Do you know that he's the Henry clan's eldest young master, Bruce? If you offend him, there'll be no place for you in the entire northern ice region. Do you know that? No matter how powerful your stealth is, you'll still need to eat, sleep, and rest, right? Once the Henry clan makes their move, you won't even have a chance to catch your breath. Moreover, their clan doesn't lack experts. They'll definitely have existences stronger than you." However, when she saw how indifferent Fong Xingjian appeared, she felt even more infuriated. Just then, a series of gasps rang out from the banquet's entrance. It seemed that another important character had walked in. Bruce squinted his eyes and saw a bald, strong, and unkempt man. It was Rellings, the #1 genius in the northern ice region, who had once helped Fong Xingjian prove the rebirth sword technique. Looking at this #1 genius, Bruce's gaze narrowed slightly. Although the other party's clan was a far cry from his, in terms of individual abilities, Bruce was a far cry from Rellings. Thankfully, although the two of them were not friends, they were far from being enemies as well. As the #1 genius in the northern ice region and an expert who was believed to have a chance of attaining the divine level, Rellings attracted almost everyone's gazes the moment he appeared. It was as if he had been born to be the center of attention. The only person present who could be a match for Rellings seemed to be the Henry clan's eldest young master, Bruce. Of the two of them, one had unrivaled authority while the other had astonishing abilities. They could be said to be the two most outstanding people amongst the younger generation in the northern ice region. Countless people's gazes kept on flitting between the two of them, as if anticipating their encounter. Bruce was the only one who felt a little awkward. He did not wish to meet Rellings at a time like this. However, he still adjusted his emotions a little and waited for Rellings to come over, displaying the demeanor of a great aristocrat. Just as Bruce thought that Rellings would walk in his direction, Rellings looked in Fong Xingjian's direction with a puzzled expression. Then he laughed and walked toward Fong Xingjian. Oliver frowned. This guy knows Rellings? So that's how it is. His backing is Rellings? But to be able to be together with Rellings, he shouldn't be an ordinary person. Why haven't I seen him before? Kite said with some understanding. But even if Rellings and Bruce are compared, there's not much difference. He's not even Rellings himself. So what's the use? In the distance, Madame Vicky shook her head and said in disdain, so he's treating Rellings as his backing. However, Rellings is only slightly stronger in terms of individual abilities. His talent is amazing, but how can his overall abilities compare to the Henry clan's over 100 years of accumulation? In terms of actual abilities, Rellings is far from enough. Moreover, this guy isn't Rellings. Everyone's gazes toward Fong Xingjian seem to have changed a little. However, even if Rellings were the one who had hit Bruce, it would be impossible for him to take it on. Moreover, the one who had done it was not Rellings himself. However, Rellings looked at Fong Xingjian with some curiosity. A powerful martial will gushed out, containing waves of Thunderbolt's prestige. Thunderbolts came from the heavens and possessed endless prowess. They were also able to change the environment and bring about vitality. They had always been seen as a symbol of the gods, a combination of life and death. Right now, Rellings' martial will contain the prestige of Thunderbolts, making one feel as if they were facing a divine prowess that had descended from the heavens. However, Fong Xingjian did not move his body. He casually took on this martial will and clashed with the deathly sword intent in his heart. Chapter 572. Fong Xingjian. You can recognize me? Hee, your outer appearance has changed a little, but I can still recognize the disposition in your will. The exchange was completed in an instant. Rellings chuckled and said, Why have you come to the northern ice region? Why didn't you tell me that you were here? Fong Xingjian said calmly, It's no big deal. There's no need to trouble you. However, Rellings refused to let go of Fong Xingjian, wanted to have an exchange on martial arts with him. Although the fight between Fong Xingjian and the Serene Shrine was very secretive and no one knew about it, just the fact that he had defeated the School of Sword Arts Supreme Chief and forced the Fifth Prince to retreat in the Eastern Sand region. These two great battle achievements were sufficient for him to become the top person amongst the Empire's younger generation. Seeing that Fong Xingjian did not say anything, Rellings grinned and said, Do you know that you won't be able to participate in the national selection this time around? Fong Xingjian lifted his head and looked at Rellings, saying with some surprise, Oh, how did you know? The prize for the first place in the national selection was a divine remains equipment. Of course, he wanted to fight for it. Seeing that his words had finally caught Fong Xingjian's attention, Rellings grinned and said, I naturally have my sources of information. The Knight Association and the National Central Academy plan to invite you to be a judge for the national selection this time around. Therefore, you won't be able to participate in the national selection as a participant. This is the latest internal news, and it'll probably only reach your great western city a week later. Judge, Fong Xingjian frowned, unable to figure out the reason for the central government to do this. Audrey, who was at the side, looked at Rellings and Fong Xingjian with some astonishment. Seeing that Rellings, who is usually extremely arrogant and disdainful of speaking to others, had actually spoken so much to Fong Xingjian, she gradually felt puzzled. Who on earth are you? Fong Xingjian said, You'll know in a while. Rellings looked at Audrey and Fong Xingjian and frowned slightly. He communicated through his martial will. Brother, it's best that you don't touch this woman. She's already been booked by an important character. Xia, you also know about this? Of course, if it wasn't for the glory of a deity, why would I come here? But since you already know, why did you still provoke this woman? I want to protect her. The communication of wills was completed in an instant. Rellings's eyes were wide open as he looked at Feng Xinjian in disbelief. Feng Xinjian was going to go against the 8-directional Crimson Dragon for Audrey. Rellings let out a bitter laugh and said, "Brother, the home of a woman is the grave of a hero. Aren't you working too hard for Audrey?" Audrey asked doubtfully, "What are you guys talking about?" Rellings glanced at him, smiled, and shook his head. "It's a blessing to be good-looking." From afar, Bruce looked at how passionate Rellings was toward Feng Xinjian and laughed coldly in his heart. "Just because I'm praising you, you think you're the #1 genius in the Northern Ice region? Do you really think that you're someone important?" Both of them thought that they were geniuses and that their strength was astonishing. "Umph, how could you understand the 100 years of accumulation of my Henry clan?" Having been beaten up by a kid, Bruce was infuriated to the extreme. Right now, even if Rellings wanted to support Feng Xinjian, Bruce was determined not to give him any face. Thinking of how Rellings and Audrey were clinging onto that kid, the fury in Bruce's heart grew stronger and stronger. He could not help but grab one of his subordinates and urge them, "Why isn't Martha here yet? Send someone to hurry her up." However, just then, a series of music suddenly rang out in the sky, and a rain of petals fell from the sky. It was as if the world of immortals had descended into the mortal world. Over 10 white-veiled ladies flew over while dragging a large carriage. They were like fairies and saintesses from legends, floating in midair. Amidst the fragrance and celestial music, a lady with a graceful figure and wearing a white veil sat on the large carriage. Under everyone's gaze, she slowly stood up. Diana of the 8-directional Crimson Dragon has specially come to pay a visit to the Pop clan. Bruce's brows twitched, and he suddenly had a bad premonition. Diana of the 8-directional Crimson Dragon? Why is she here? In the distance, the noblewoman Vicky said in surprise, "Diana?" The leader of the 8-directional Crimson Dragon is Xia, and under Xia are 4 of the women he dotes on the most. They help him to rule over the 4 directions. Diana is known as the perverted concubine, and she specializes in finding beauties for Xia to enrich his Elysium. For her to come to pay a visit to the Pop clan, could it be that? Saying this, she could not help but smile. Today, there are really waves after waves of trouble. There's going to be a good show to watch. In the banquet, she was not the only one who knew of Diana's background. Everyone who knew about it started to whisper among themselves, then looked at Audrey with a strange gaze. The #1 beauty in the Northern Ice region. If Diana had not come for her, who else could she have come for? Diana's countenance turned pale, and she felt her body go limp as if she would collapse at any moment. The head of the Pop clan, Andolph, walked out. "Good night, Madam Diana. The 8-directional Crimson Dragon is very kind. Please send my regards to Lord Xia." Diana wore a white veil over her face, revealing only a pair of starry eyes. She swept an indifferent gaze across everyone present, pausing on Audrey for a moment. Then, she looked at Lilia and nodded slightly. She said, "There's no need for unnecessary formalities. Lord Xia has already decided on a wedding with Miss Audrey. I've come this time around to bring Miss Audrey over. This must be Miss Audrey, right? She's really a heavenly beauty. And that maid next to Miss Audrey is quite good-looking as well. I'll be bringing her along as well." Andolph's countenance was a little grim. If Audrey were to be brought away just like that, where would their Pop clan put their face? In the distance, Bruce also clenched his fists. His countenance was grim, his lips were pale, and there seemed to be astonishment, fury, and terror in his eyes. However, he still stood up at the next moment. Before he could say anything, Oliver pulled him back and said sincerely, "Bruce, as long as you're alive, you can find any woman you want. This is the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, the undying Xia. Even if you don't consider yourself, you must consider your family." In fact, when he was pulled back by Oliver, the breath that Bruce had been holding back had already dissipated. Right now, he could only look at Diana and Audrey with an extremely complicated gaze. There was terror, relaxation, and resentment in his eyes. His emotions were extremely complicated. The upper-class Lady Vicky sighed and said, It's the 8-directional Crimson Dragon. Even with the Henry clan's 100 years of accumulation, they won't be able to fend it off. There's no need for a divine-level expert to appear. With just a single word, they'll be able to suppress an entire clan. This is what it means to be truly awe-inspiring. These aristocrats in the Northern Ice region are nothing compared to this. Rellings continued to persuade him through information currents. Xinjiang, don't be rash. With your talent, you'll have the chance to strive for the divine level. If you act rashly now, you'll be ruining your future. The 8-directional Crimson Dragons, Xia has world-shaking abilities and is one of the 10 divine-level experts in the Empire. Just bear with it for now. It won't be too late for you to take revenge when you have the ability in the future. Chapter 573. From the moment Diana had arrived and suppressed everyone with just a few words, no one had dared to step out to rebut her. This displayed the unrivaled dominance and willfulness of the 8-directional Crimson Dragon and Xia. Diana looked at everyone present, and a hint of disdain flashed in her eyes. However, with a wave of her hand, streams of long white muslin turned into streams of silk that swept out toward Diana and Lilia. However, just then, a palm that seemed to bring along waves of magical power suddenly appeared in a way that transcended time and space, grabbing onto the silk that Diana had shot out. Fang Xingjian grabbed onto the white muslin casually and looked toward Diana. Where's Xia's will? Get him to come out and meet me. You're courting death. Diana was enraged. Xia was one of the 10 divine-level experts in the Empire, the 8-directional Crimson Dragon's master. How could he tolerate others shouting at him as they pleased? With a tremble of his palm, a violent power gushed out through the white muslin. Wherever it passed by, the air would shatter and strong gales would sweep out, as if wanting to turn everything the white muslin came into contact with into fragments. However, faced with this attack, Fang Xingjian slashed out with his sword fingers, slashing the white muslin into pieces. Then with a move, he appeared behind Diana and grabbed her neck lightly, lifting her up as if she was a little chick. How dare you? Many astonished and furious bellows rang out, and the white-clothed maids next to Diana made their moves simultaneously. Leg shadows and palm shadows filled up the sky, encompassing Fang Xingjian entirely. Almost all of these women were at the pinnacle of the first transition. As they exerted force with their punches and kicks, they were like many elephants dashing around. With over 10 of them attacking at the same time, it was as if a bomb had been ignited, and it was as if even the air was going to explode from the impact. However, at the next moment, an explosive bellow that was mixed with waves of violent martial will burst out. Scram! How powerful was Fang Xingjian's current breath? He could explode the earth with just a single breath. Right now, with an explosive bellow from him, layers of air currents burst out. The white-clothed ladies in the surroundings felt their minds go blank, and they fell down while bleeding from their 7 apertures from the shock waves that were mixed with strong martial will. Diana, who was the closest, was in an even worse state. Even though she had the battle prowess of a level 29 conferred knight, her head was still buzzing, and she almost completely lost consciousness. Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment. To think that someone would dare to attack the 8-directional Crimson Dragon's seductive concubine? Rellings covered his face, as if he did not dare to imagine what would happen next. Bruce was stunned for a moment before he suddenly exhaled. Idiot! Audrey stared blankly at Fang Xingjian, a strange look flashing across her eyes. Under such circumstances, Diana's eyes suddenly rolled back and waves of mysterious incantations emanated from her body. It wasn't coming from her stomach, throat, or mouth. Instead, it was the sound of her body vibrating continuously. It sounded like countless insects whispering, giving off an evil and cruel feeling. Accompanied by the series of mysterious incantations, Fang Xingjian could sense a fanatical willpower emerging from Diana's consciousness. The fanatical faith spread out in all directions like a signal tower. Feng Xingjian looked at this scene in astonishment. At the next moment, he sensed a gush of willpower descending from the skies and entering Diana's body. It was an aura that was filled with brutality, craftiness, and craziness. If the first prince's will was said to have the prestige of sovereign, like a divine emperor who ruled over the world, then the fifth prince's will was one that engulfed the world and nurtured himself, bringing along an extremely evil and selfish disposition. The will that had descended from the skies and entered Diana's body was one that was against humans, society, and society. It was a brutal, bloody, and primitive disposition. Moreover, Feng Xingjian could sense fanatical worship and faith from Diana's will. To think that this Xia is getting his subordinates to have fanatical faith in him, he then uses his subordinates as signal towers, sending a portion of his martial will into his subordinates' bodies at any time. Feng Xingjian thought, does this guy really think of himself as a god? As Diana spoke, her eyes turned white, and a violent power was emitted from her body, shaking off Feng Xingjian's palm. Who is it? Explosive air currents seethed in the air. Diana uttered a single word softly, but it was as if the entire world had started to tremble. Who dares to make an enemy out of our 8-directional crimson dragon? Under the divine might, everyone felt as if there was a Mount Tai pressing down on them. Countless people were pressed down onto the ground by the waves of divine level pressure. The violent will shot out as if it was a material substance, causing terror to rise in everyone's hearts. It was a terror of having their lives in someone else's hands. Under the terrifying divine might, Andolph, the clan head, looked at Feng Xingjian in great astonishment and fury. How could he have expected that such a great matter would be disrupted by Feng Xingjian? At the thought that Xia might infuriate the Pop clan, he pointed at Feng Xingjian while trembling and said, "It's all his fault. He attacked Diana. He acted on his own. This has nothing to do with us." Everyone looked at Feng Xingjian, as if waiting for him to break down, cry, and beg for mercy. However, Feng Xingjian was destined to disappoint them. Streams of deathly sword intents burst out from Feng Xingjian's body. They soared into the sky like waves of black smoke, as if wanting to cover up the sun and moon. The terrifying aura caused everyone's hearts to palpitate. Right now, the pressure from Feng Xingjian was about the same as the one Xia had given them. Bruce's countenance changed. His body, which had been able to hold on with great difficulty, let out a stifled snort and dropped to his knees with a thud after Feng Xingjian released his martial will as well. As for Kite and Oliver, they had long since been forced to their knees by Xia's explosive aura. After dropping to his knees, Bruce looked at the two people in the sky, and his face flushed extremely red. It was as if his pride had been fiercely pricked by someone, and blood vessels popped out from his eyeballs. In the entire venue, only two people remained standing. One of them was Rellings. Streams of thunderous will surrounded his body, making him appear to be at ease. The other person was Lilia. She clenched her teeth tightly, and her entire body trembled as if she would drop to her knees at any moment. However, she endured it, continuing to get used to the impact of the divine level expert's wills. However, the two people in the sky did not care about this. After releasing their martial wills, Feng Xingjian looked at Xia in the sky and said, "You're Xia? I'm Feng Xingjian from the Great Western region. I'll protect Audrey. If you have any questions, I'll take them all on as well." The rumbling sound was like thunder exploding in the sky, and it pierced through everyone's consciousness like lightning. At this moment, it was as if everyone was completely suppressed by Feng Xingjian's martial will, unable to summon any will to resist. However, Xiao was clearly not one of them. A series of terrifying and long laughter rang out from Diana's body. Her laughter contained a terrifying aura, as if a demon lord from hell had descended and was about to bathe the mortal world in blood. How long has it been? How long has it been since someone dared to speak to me like this? You still dare to lay your eyes on my woman? No one can lay their eyes on my woman. Lad, I'll let you know what true terror is. Chapter 574. Then take a sword attack from me. Today, let me shake the prestige of divine-level experts like you. Faced with a portion of Xia's martial will, Fang Xingjian knew that it was impossible for Xia to agree to it casually. Therefore, right from the start, he was prepared to fight at full power. In that instant, over 10,000 specialty seeds exploded simultaneously. At this moment, there seemed to be an overwhelming power gushing out from Fang Xingjian's body. 1.08 billion physical particles also burst out explosively, turning into countless piercing white light that pierced through the sky. A black sword edge soared into the sky, and the Heaven's Volition Sword Intent was activated. A tremendous power slashed the cloud layers in the sky into two. Simultaneously, a golden armor rose up, encompassing Fang Xingjian's body completely. The will and the world-engulfing battle god armor was also activated at full power, turning into waves of warm golden currents that seethed in Fang Xingjian's body. Waves of power mixed together with Fang Xingjian's physical strength, and the surrounding space trembled crazily, as if distorted to an extreme. The golden glow from the world-engulfing battle god armor and the black glow from the Heaven's Volition Sword Intent intertwined, turning into a stream of dark golden light that exuded waves of aura of death and destruction. The changes happened in an instant. In almost 1,000th of a second, Fang Xingjian unleashed almost all of his powers explosively. He had to give Xia, the 8-directional Crimson Dragon's master, the strongest shock right from the start. Violent sword intents seemed as if they were going to pierce through space, and waves of extremely majestic power seethed to and fro in his body. At this moment, Fang Xingjian felt as if he had turned into a star, and the power released from the tremors in his body was enough to cause earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Almost at the instant when Fang Xingjian unleashed his powers, a look of astonishment appeared on Xia's face for the first time. Immediately after, he also made his move. With this attack, waves of vast, primitive, and bloody will gushed forth. With a single punch, the entire world seemed to have returned to the time when humans had just been born, when everything was in a blur. Natural selection, survival of the fittest. This was the way of heaven. The strong ruled over everything. This was the ultimate truth of this world. Waves of will erupted from Xia's body, turning into a surging force that struck Fang Xingjian. Xia's martial techniques were primitive, crude, and bloody, just like the predatory animals of the ancient human tribes. They were filled with an instinctive aura and a unique martial will. My Tao is the heavenly Tao. Take this Heaven Path Fist. With a single punch, air currents exploded and space distorted. The martial will of the law of the jungle that was contained within the punch was even more terrifying. In front of this heavenly Tao fist, no matter what material it was, as long as it did not surpass Xia in terms of power, it would be destroyed into dust by the surging will of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, with this punch, Xia did not perform any flashy techniques. He only incessantly unleashed all of Diana's powers, unleashing all of the power from his martial will, and then smashing everything before him into dregs. With a single punch, everything would be destroyed. There were no techniques that could be used to dodge or neutralize Xia's heavenly Tao fist. It could only be met head-on. Every expert had their own path, and their own unique disposition. The first prince dominated the world and had the prowess of a sovereign. Therefore, he had always suppressed the world, wanting to be the ruler of the world. The fifth prince engulfed the world, using the entire world to nourish himself. Therefore, he had always been searching for heavenly and earthly treasures and various benefits to strengthen himself. The undying Xia, the leader of the 8-directional Crimson Dragon, had a path of survival of the fittest. It was the instinct of all living things, and everything would return to the most primitive state. At this moment, Fang Xingjian suddenly understood that the Elysium was not purely for enjoyment. Instead, it was to carry out Xia's own path. It was because all living things only had two instincts, survival and reproduction. This was also the difference between the heavenly Tao and the human Tao. Xia carried out the heavenly Tao and the survival of the fittest. This was equivalent to exterminating humanity, leaving only bestial nature. Faced with this punch that carried out the heavenly Tao and the survival of the fittest, the vast fist intent, spirit, and martial will made everyone present feel as if they had been brought back to ancient times when humans had just been born. It was an era when humans ate raw meat and drank blood. Waves of vast and primitive aura gushed forth, and everyone felt tiny. It was as if their physical bodies would disintegrate at any moment under the terrifying fist force of Xia's punch. No one present had the slightest ability to resist the terrifying might and power. In fact, there was only despair left in their eyes. At this moment, everyone had the same thought in their hearts. It was that this punch could not be fended off at all. However, Fang Xingjian did not. He had no intention of neutralizing or avoiding the power of this punch. He also activated all of his powers and tapped out a finger towards Xia's fist. The power of over 10,000 specialty seeds. The explosion of 1.08 billion physical particles, the will of the world-engulfing battle god armor, and the sword edge of the heavens volition sword intent were all activated, condensing into a power that was not inferior to Xia's. The sword of infiltrating void and the light pursuit sword ripples were activated at the same time, and Fang Xingjian integrated them into a single attack with his unparalleled sword arts. They turned into several 10 million streams of sword ripples, exploding both inside and outside of Diana's body. At the next moment, the two powers collided completely. Light rays were completely distorted, turning into streams of light circles that circled around their bodies. The surrounding space also started to seethe, sending out layers of ripples. Countless forces exploded from their bodies. However, under the effects of the distorted space, they were condensed within a 10-meter radius around the two of them. At this moment, the area within a 10-meter radius around the two of them was filled with ring-shaped light rays, distorted space, explosive air currents, and high temperatures of several 100,000 degrees Celsius. The area within a 10-meter radius had turned into a completely dead space. However, not a single bit of the air leaked out. Under the effects of the distorted space, the two of them were crazily attacking their bodies. Due to the distortion of light rays, their bodies turned into darkness. They were like black holes of nothingness, crazily engulfing the surrounding light rays and heat energy, increasing the temperature and destructive prowess in the center. Everyone looked at the darkness in the sky with astonished gazes, feeling terrified at the astonishing destructive prowess it contained. Any existence below the divine level would probably be disintegrated into the most basic physical particles if they were to get close to it. The people present were not even able to observe the situation within. After a very long time, the darkness slowly dissipated and the distorted space slowly calmed down. It was also because the space was no longer distorted that a loud bang rang out. Shock waves that brought along seething heat waves burst out instantly, overturning several tens of houses and shooting out toward everyone present with an aura that seemed to be able to tear everything apart. Chapter 575. The air currents blew onto Bruce's body at a speed of over 1,000 meters per second. The latter's countenance changed, and he crazily unleashed his powers. However, he still retreated over 1,000 meters before coming to a stop with great difficulty. Lilia's countenance changed. Just as she was about to be blown away, Rellings's palm grabbed her shoulder gently. Then he slashed out with his hand, turning into countless blades formed from thunderbolts that soared into the sky. They finally shattered the tempest descending from the sky, preventing countless people from being blown away. The entire lawn had instantly turned into a charred land. Everyone immediately looked toward the sky. However, Diana's body was nowhere to be seen. Only Fang Xingjian was left. Wearing the golden world-engulfing battle god armor, he stood in void space, exuding terrifying waves from his entire body. Fang Xinjian, I'll remember you. Xia's voice rang out from void space, becoming increasingly softer and softer before completely dissipating in space. The martial will of the undying Xia, one of the 10 great divine-level experts, was destroyed by a single sword attack from Fang Xinjian. What was power? What was prowess? Before Fang Xinjian's sword attack, the Henry clan, the Pop clan, and the #1 genius in the Northern Ice region seemed to pale in comparison. To think that Fang Xinjian could suppress Xia's martial will with his demigod cultivation. He was simply a legend, a myth, and there had never been such a thing in history. At this moment, the many aristocrats all paled in comparison. Lady Vicky stared at Fang Xinjian, blushing at the thought of what she had said earlier. To think that she had failed to recognize Mount Tai and had treated a real dragon as a loach. At this moment, Bruce looked at Fang Xinjian with a dazed gaze. Fang Xinjian? He's the #1 genius in the Empire. That Fang Xinjian? To think that he forced back Xia's martial will? How is this possible? At the thought of these, his countenance changed drastically. His eyes were filled with regret, worry, nervousness, jealousy, and hatred. Why? Why is there someone like Fang Xinjian in this world? Why can't I have his talent and strength? On the other side, Relling's eyes gleamed. Amazing, this is really amazing. To think that a demigod can defeat a divine-level expert's martial will. This is something that has never happened since ancient times. Audrey looked at Fang Xinjian in the sky, her mind completely filled with his figure. Lilia looked at Fang Xinjian in the sky, and the worship in her eyes became even more fanatical. The head of the Pop clan, Ando Fu, looked at Fang Xinjian. When he thought of what he had said earlier, his eyes were filled with regret. Earlier on, he was the first to testify against Fang Xinjian after Xia arrived. Initially, he wanted to curry favor with Xia in advance and wash away his responsibility. However, he had not expected that Fang Xinjian would be so powerful that he could shake Xia's martial will directly. Sai, why is it like this? Why did this happen? I'm so regretful, so regretful. Ando Fu muttered inside. If I'd known this would happen, why would I have chosen a side so early? Now that I've offended this person, I wonder how he'll deal with me. Fang Xinjian floated down slowly from the sky. His mind was still immersed in the exchange he had with Xia earlier. This was the first time he had gone all out against the martial will of a divine-level expert, and he had comprehended a lot. He could faintly sense that his sword arts had improved once again, and the 5 god-slaying swords seemed to be showing signs of merging. However, just as he floated down to the ground, and everyone was looking at him in a daze with various expressions on their faces, a long whistle rang out, and a figure pierced through the sky like a thunderbolt, appearing in the sky above the lawn while laughing maniacally. Henry Clan's Martha is here. Young master, is this the guy who's courting death? Bruce let out an astonished cry and shouted, no. However, it was already too late. The silhouette in midair paused for a moment, and then like a meteor descending from the sky, he plunged down toward Fang Xinjian. There were 1,440 streams of aura from specialty seeds. This meant that the person who had come was a demigod with at least 1 tier of perfection. Terrifying powers continued to explode in his flesh and blood. His muscles trembled, and his bones trembled, releasing thunderous booms. It was just a simple dash, but it was as if a myriad of thunderbolts had rung out in the entire sky. His strength, prowess, and spirit had all reached an extreme. Then at the next moment, a bang rang out. As Fang Xinjian punched out toward the back of his head without even looking, the man by the name of Martha was smashed into a pile of minced meat across space, turning into a basin of blood rain that splattered onto the ground. Fang Xinjian paused his comprehension, opened his eyes, and looked in Bruce's direction with a burning gaze. You sent him to kill me? Being encompassed by Fang Xinjian's gaze, Bruce felt as if his thoughts and consciousness had been frozen. His body went limp, and it was as if he was going to drop to his knees at any moment. However, he was the first successor of the Henry clan after all. It was impossible for Fong Xingjian to give in so easily after merely throwing a glance at him. Bruce continued to force himself to look at Fong Xingjian, saying with grief and indignation, "Fong Xingjian, it's true that I've offended you a little in the past when I didn't know of your identity and abilities. However, I didn't hurt you at all. On the contrary, not only did you injure me, but you even killed a demigod expert from our Henry clan. What more do you want now?" Fong Xingjian looked at him with indifference and said slowly, "Earlier, didn't you say that you want to get this Martha to kill me? Those were just words I said out of anger." With Bruce's arrogance, he felt extremely humiliated when he said these words. However, under Fong Xingjian's pressure, he had no choice but to put down his pride for now. He had thought that although Fong Xingjian had some talent and potential, he would only be on par with Rellings. At most, he would be at the level of a genius student or teacher in the regional academy. Although Fong Xingjian was very strong, he would still be able to deal with an influential clan like the Henry clan easily. However, he had not expected that Fong Xingjian's abilities would far surpass his imagination. To think that Fong Xingjian would be able to crush Xia's martial will with a single sword attack. He was not the only one. Oliver, who was at the side, felt so much regret that his intestines had turned green. How could he have expected that he would be able to meet a super genius like Fong Xingjian, who could take on a divine-level expert at a banquet? It was as if he had encountered a plot from a legendary story. Seeing that Bruce still could not let it go and was still trying to maintain a little bit of his dignity, Oliver quickly pulled Carter, who was in a daze, to the ground and knelt down, begging for mercy. "Lord Fong Xingjian, we were blind earlier and didn't know your identity. That's why there were some misunderstandings. Right now, you're able to take on a divine-level expert's martial will head-on. You're undoubtedly the #1 genius in the world. Please let us off. We'll definitely thank you handsomely." With that, he tugged at Bruce's trousers and tried to persuade him. "Bruce, Lord Xingjian is able to go up against Xia's martial will. That means that he's already someone like a divine-level expert. Apologize to Lord Xingjian and admit your mistake. There's nothing you can't understand." Chapter 576. Hearing that, Bruce was extremely infuriated. He glared at Oliver and scolded, "Oliver, I couldn't tell that you're such a vile person who fawns on those in power and who goes wherever the wind blows. You want to kneel down and admit your mistake, trying to suck up to Fong Xingjian, but I'm not as shameless as you." He then looked at Fong Xingjian and said, "Fong Xingjian, I was in the wrong for what happened earlier. When we get back, I'll get my clan to give you a compensation of 100,000 gold. How about we write off this matter?" "Write off?" Fong Xingjian looked at the three of them with a faint smile. How could he possibly let the two of them off so easily? Since he wanted to protect Audrey, it was impossible for him to handle everything personally, lest all sorts of flies and mosquitoes came to deal with him. Therefore, he would naturally protect the Pop clan, allowing this clan to truly shelter Audrey from the wind and rain in the future. Naturally, he would not be stingy in building up some authority in the Northern Ice region. Fong Xingjian said, "Initially, it would have been fine if I gave you a sword attack as a small punishment for offending me. However, since you still intend to kill me, it's impossible for things to end so simply." "Fong Xingjian, don't go overboard," Bruce said. "I'm a conferred knight conferred by the Empire. I have an official position and real authority. Are you going to go against the law and kill me? I've offended you in the past, suffered a loss, and admitted my mistake. What else do you want now?" Bruce was right. Although the perverted concubine Diana or the undying Xia were extremely powerful, they did not have the status of the Empire's government. Even if they were to be killed, the government would not look for trouble. However, if Fong Xingjian were to kill Bruce before so many people, he would be going against the Empire's law and the Knight Association's rules. There would be a lot of trouble, and this was what Bruce was relying on. In particular, when he admitted his mistake just now, he had already greatly trampled on his own dignity. At this time, when Fong Xingjian forced him again, It directly aroused his rebellious mentality. In fact, in a short period of time, he even had a kind of courage that was not afraid of death. Even an ordinary person would commit suicide by jumping off a building or slashing someone with a knife when he was extremely angry, let alone a genius like Bruce who was forced to the extreme. If worst comes to worst, I'll just fight it out with you. Aren't you just stronger than me? If worst comes to worst, you'll just have to kill me. Don't even think about having an easy time. At this moment, Bruce's fury burst forth, and his pride was pushed back to the extreme. Then he forcefully lifted his head up from Fang Xingjian's pressure. Even his martial will showed signs of breaking through. A series of thoughts flashed through his mind, giving him a sudden understanding of the situation in front of him. Yes, in fact, he doesn't dare to kill me. Although Fang Xingjian is powerful, the First Prince and the Emperor are keeping him in check and suppressing him. If he really dares to make a move, the association and the royal family will immediately get hold of his weakness and suppress him. That's right. So what if he's powerful? As long as I don't die today, I'll definitely surpass him one day after 10 or 20 years have passed and trample on him fiercely. The series of thoughts and comprehensions, especially when faced with an expert like Fang Xingjian, made Bruce feel as if he was dancing on the tip of a blade. Bruce's aura grew increasingly stronger, and his martial arts started to improve. He once again regained the confident, astute, and disposition of an elite aristocrat that he had displayed at the banquet earlier. Fang Xingjian looked at him and said, "Why would I kill you? Of course I won't kill you. I only want to take you under my wing and make you a little sweeper. You'll help me get rid of the impurities and clean the toilets for 10 years. What? When Bruce heard Fang Xingjian's first sentence, he was still very proud, thinking that he had comprehended the main point. However, his next sentence gave him a great shock, and his face revealed an inexplicable expression of grief and indignation. Fang Xingjian, to think that you want me, the successor of the Henry clan, to clean the toilets? You're going too far. You're going too far. Even if I die, I won't do it. It's not up to you." As he spoke, Fang Xingjian's palm trembled, turning into streams of sword cheese and sword intents that tore through the air and gushed out toward Bruce. The terrifying sword force and martial will mix together, making it hard to tell which was the real power and which was just an illusory martial will. At this moment, after sparring with Xia, Fang Xingjian once again gained a new understanding of martial arts. The power of his physical body and martial will mix together perfectly, as if he was a true divine-level expert. Bruce let out a furious bellow. Just as he was about to unleash a burst of resistance, he was completely suppressed by a deathly sword intent. His physical body was unable to move at all. Then the sword force circled around Bruce's body fiercely, breaking through all the powers in his body. It then gathered in Bruce's consciousness, suppressing all of his martial techniques, coordination, and martial will. It could be said that at this moment, Bruce still had the physical body of a level 29 conferred knight, but he only had the power of an ordinary person. He was unable to perform any hint of martial techniques or extraordinary abilities. Then a gush of pressure gushed forth, and with a thud, Bruce dropped to his knees as if he was prostrating on the ground, kowtowing and admitting his mistake. His cultivation had dropped from that of a level 29 conferred knight to that of an ordinary person. It was to the extent that he would no longer be able to cultivate in the future. What kind of blow was this? Bruce's countenance was pale, and his eyes were filled with despair. It was as if his soul had been sucked out. Fang Xingjian said calmly, "Lilia, look after him. Later on, bring him back to the academy and make him a sweeper." Yes. Lilia stepped forward and came to Bruce's side. Seeing how ruthless Fang Xingjian was, everyone present was as quiet as cicadas in winter. Oliver and Kite lowered their heads even further, and their hearts beat increasingly faster. It was as if they were afraid that Fang Xingjian would deal with them in the same way. Fang Xingjian threw a glance at Oliver and Kite and said, "After you go back, bring 1 million gold to the Great Western region. Take it as an apology gift from the two of you, and we'll forget about what happened today." Hearing the compensation of 1 million gold, Oliver's face twitched as if a piece of his heart had been dug out. However, at the thought of Fang Xingjian's prowess, he still gritted his teeth and agreed to it. However, his heart was filled with extreme regret. 1 million gold. A whole 1 million gold. I don't have that much money. How many estates and businesses do I have to sell off? Over 10 years of hard work, decades of the clan's savings, all gone in a single day. Fang Xingjian's gaze swept toward Andolph, the head of the Pop clan, and said calmly, "You don't have a backbone, nor do you have any sense of responsibility for the clan. In the future, you don't have to be the head of the Pop clan anymore. Let Audrey take over." Andolph's countenance changed, and he gritted his teeth, not daring to object. However, Audrey said, "That's enough. Fang Xingjian, I don't want to be the clan's head. From today onward, you could just bring me away from here." Fang Xingjian said calmly, "Since I'm asking you to do it, you must do it. Andolph can't define me, and neither can you." Audrey was infuriated and wanted to retort on the spot. However, she felt an extremely strong and surging will that seemed to be material pressing down on her. It encompassed her body, causing her to be unable to say a single word. Fang Xingjian turned to look at Andolph and said, "Do you have any other opinions?" Chapter 577. "No, I don't have any objections," Anderfell said dejectedly. "This time around, it's true that I'm blind from old age and wasn't able to see things clearly. From today onward, Audrey will be the head of the Pop clan, and I'll listen to all of her orders." At this moment, he felt extremely regretful. If he had not offended Fang Xingjian, he would have been able to borrow Fang Xingjian's power to truly become the head of a top-notch aristocratic clan like the Henry clan. All right, but Audrey will return to the Great Western region with me in case the 8-directional Crimson Dragon launches a sneak attack on him. I'll temporarily send someone over to help Audrey manage the entire Pop clan. Fang Xingjian's voice rang out in the sky, and it was as if many bombs had exploded in the sky. Faced with Fang Xingjian's words, no one present dared to object. His series of thunderous means and actions had shocked everyone present. From today onward, as long as Fang Xingjian was still alive, no one would dare to offend the Pop clan again. Even aristocratic ladies like Vicky blushed a little as they looked at Fang Xingjian. Ripples flowed in their eyes, and they licked their tongues, revealing hints of lust. This was indeed the case. With how young and powerful Fang Xingjian was, he held a great attraction to these aristocratic ladies. However, just as the dust had almost settled and no one else dared to go against Fang Xingjian, a soft sigh rang out from the horizon and entered everyone's ears. At the same time, waves of green flames ignited on Bruce's body, bringing with them waves of explosive power that pulled Bruce up into the sky. At the sight of this scene, Fang Xingjian let out a cold laugh, and a majestic, deathly sword intent soared into the sky. "You're still trying to put on an act before me? Come on out." The deathly sword intent struck a stretch of clouds across space, colliding fiercely with the martial will of the person in hiding. As a stifled snort rang out, Bruce once again fell to the ground. The expert hidden in the clouds also revealed himself. It was a white-haired, elderly man who bore 70 to 80% resemblance to Bruce. "Great-grandfather, save me." Seeing the old man in the sky, Bruce cried out in pleasant surprise. This old man was the strongest expert in the Henry clan, the previous governor with a cultivation of demigod level. The old man sighed and said, "Alas, young people are too arrogant and will easily suffer losses in the future. Young people should forgive people wherever possible. Bruce has already apologized to you, so why are you being so overbearing? Although our Henry clan is not the royal family, nor is it a divine-level faction, we will not be stingy with our lives on the line. Do you really want to become enemies that will not rest until one of us is dead? Moreover, when you clashed head-on with Xia, you only managed to defeat a portion of Xia's martial will. Yet now, you're going to be targeted by the 8-directional Crimson Dragon. You must feel terrible, right? Why bother making enemies? Furthermore, it's impossible for you to come out unscathed after exchanging blows with Xia. You must have been injured, right? It was different from when Marcia was too impulsive and directly attacked them. After this, Henry Clan's ancestor had sensed that Bruce was in danger. He had quietly snuck over, and after understanding what was going on, he had suddenly made a move, wanting to save his grandson. However, it was a pity that he had not escaped Fong Xingjian's discerning eyes. Not rest until one of us is dead? Fong Xingjian muttered these words softly, looked at the old man, and said, "Old man, you've attained 2 tiers of perfection in your specialty seeds and ether organs, right?" Fong Xingjian's gaze was as sharp as swordlight, and he instantly saw through the old man's background. He said calmly, "A mere demigod with 2 tiers of perfection dares to say that I won't rest until one of us is dead? I'll let you see if I've been injured in the battle with Xia." As he spoke, the sword intent on Fong Xingjian's body grew even stronger. He tapped out with a finger, and streams of infiltrating void sword force exploded outside the old man's body. It was as if the old man's body was rebelling. Countless pieces of his skin and flesh shattered, his muscles disintegrated, and his internal organs collapsed. It was as if the old man was going to be overturned with just a single move. The old man let out an agonizing cry, and his entire body was covered in blood. Violent Marshall will seethe it out as he looked at Fong Xingjian with a savage expression. "You little thief, do you really think that you've got our Henry clan under your control? Our clan's 100 years of accumulation isn't something that you can imagine." A violent will soared into the sky, and a total of 4 auras of experts rose up from the will. At this moment, they appeared in the surroundings of the manor with a flash, as if they had surrounded the entire manor. These 4 auras came from a total of 4 corpses. All of them were the corpses of the past heads of the Henry clan. Right now, they were floating in midair, unleashing waves of world-shaking power. Each of these 4 dead clan heads seemed to have been a demigod expert when they were still alive. Their physical bodies did not rot or decay, and right now, they looked as if they were still alive. It was also as if they were in a deep slumber and would wake up at any moment. The Henry clan had been around for over 100 years, but its foundation had already existed even before the empire was founded. It was just that it had only been over 100 years since they had become a top-notch influential clan. The Henry clan's predecessor was the Myriad Spirits sect, an evil cult that had wreaked havoc across the entire northern ice region before the empire was founded. The first clan head of the Henry clan had been a member of the Myriad Spirits sect's upper echelon. Later on, when the empire was unified and the Myriad Spirit evil cult was suppressed, the founders of the Henry clan rebelled against the Myriad Spirits sect and cooperated with the empire in wiping out the cult. They gained many benefits from this, especially when they inherited a large part of the Myriad Spirits sect's formation arts. Thereafter, in order to eliminate the Henry clan's influence, the entire Henry clan was moved to another region by the empire. However, after generations of hard work, the 2 clan heads became governors and managed the northern ice region. In the end, they moved the entire clan back. During this long period of time, there were countless stories and legends. Other than the old man, there had been a total of 4 demigod experts among the experts who had appeared in the entire clan. They were usually placed in the Henry clan's graveyard, worshipped day and night, and accompanied by all sorts of formations to maintain the remnant power and vitality in their bodies. At the critical moment, the corpses of the 4 experts would be brought out and set up layers of formations by the old man, allowing them to unleash an astonishing battle prowess immediately. Of course, unless it was absolutely necessary, they would not do this. Bringing out the corpses of their ancestors for battle could be said to be a battle to the death. At this moment, the 4 divine-level experts opened their eyes abruptly, as if they had come alive. 4 pairs of eyes glared at Fong Xingjian, filled with killing intent and hostility. Right now, their bodies were being penetrated by countless ether particles' energies, and their brains were filled with the information of various battle techniques, and experiences extracted from the ether particles. Their auras kept on rising, almost reaching the aura of a demigod with 3 or even 4 tiers of perfection. Even the corpses of the 4 demigod experts would not be able to withstand such a formation and power for long. They would at most be able to activate it 2 to 3 times a year, or else their corpses would break down. However, once it was activated, its prowess would be devastating. It was the greatest secret of the Myriad Spirits sect back then, and it had been perfectly inherited by the Henry clan. Furthermore, with the world's metamorphosis over the past few months, the formation's prowess had been strengthened once again, causing the Henry clan's head to be even more confident. The Henry clan's head laughed out loud and said, "Fong Xinjian, this is the mid-cheetal formation that has been secretly passed down in our Henry clan. It can make use of the physical bodies of demigods to extract the energy and information from the ether particles. All of them have the power of a demigod with 4 tiers of perfection, as well as endless martial arts and battle experience. This is our Henry clan's 100 years of savings. It's not something that you can imagine. You're only able to win against a small portion of Xia's martial will. Do you really think that you're a match for a divine-level expert? It's impossible for you to win against the 5 of us single-handedly. However, I'm not willing to become your sworn enemy. If you're willing to admit a small mistake and compensate me with that armor you're wearing, then I can consider letting you off." As he spoke, his eyes emitted waves of greed as he looked at the world-engulfing battle god armor that Fong Xinjian was wearing. It was clear that he wanted this divine remains equipment that exuded a divine level very much. Before the old man launched his sneak attack, he had been setting up the formation. His conversation with Fong Xinjian was just a pretense. Now that he had activated the formation, he had finally revealed his claws and teeth. "Do you think that I'm an idiot to let you deal with me after I give you the equipment? Moreover, old man, is this what you're relying on?" Fong Xinjian said calmly, "You're really wasting the opportunity I've given you." His gaze moved back and forth between the 4 demigod corpses, starting to consider if he should add them to the list of materials he needed to forge his divine sword. If his divine sword were to be forged from a piece of divine-level spinal bone and the remains of 4 demigods, how astonishing would its prowess be? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.